Weekly Big Show with Czek and Iain Burns.
Well, I'm Czek. With me, Iain Burns. I'm out here in Kelowna, British Columbia, in the central Okanagan, and a sucked-in day, kind of a British day here in the Okanagan, as the skies are all cloudy, and it's kind of like rain out there, drizzling away in some spots of the Okanagan. And out there in the nation's capital, how is it looking?
It's like a Vancouver day. Non-stop rain.
Non-stop rain, there you go. Well, we got a big day. We got a big day, as Mark Carney says. The hegemons are meeting today, the hegemons. And it could have some pretty serious repercussions in the world. Or I don't know, repercussions, but it could change the path of what's going on in the world. I mean, lots of big topics on the plate there for the Americans as they touched down in China, there in Beijing. We got a little clip here to show you first as Trump arrives in Beijing. There's Elon Musk coming down there and Jensen Huang. Keep playing it though. Keep playing it there in the background. You can leave the audio on too. Well, I guess take the audio off there, but you can see Jensen Huang in the back there. Elon Musk. Lots of CEOs of many of America's biggest companies. That's good. That's good. Pretty spanky, eh?
No. But it must be a bit awkward for Jensen Huang, though. I mean, the Chinese Communist Party claims his home country, Taiwan, as part of China. So I guess they assume that he's one of their citizens.
So this is the first state visit in China by a U.S. leader in 9 years. That's so Big Joe didn't go. Maybe Joe couldn't find it on a map, maybe. I don't know.
It would have been awkward, wouldn't it, to have put him in that position. So, yeah, no surprise he didn't go.
No, they could have sent Kamala. Been just as interesting. But, yeah, so kind of like a stark contrast to when Carney went to China. He took, or the recent trip by Francois-Philippe Champagne and all the bankers that went there. And like I said, at that time, you know, when Trump goes abroad, he takes all the business people with him, and no different in this time. There's Jensen Huang and Elon Musk, two of the most powerful companies in the world, with Tesla, SpaceX, and NVIDIA, and then also Tim Cook apparently there, and a bunch of other guys. But we got a little clip here from Yahoo Finance, kind of like pointing them out as Jensen Huang joined the flight, I think in Alaska, as they refueled. But here, this is the Yahoo one. Play that clip there from Yahoo. A bunch of Yahoos. Probably didn't trust Joe even coming down the stairs. But anyway, we're just playing this. You can, I don't know, Ian, can you hear me? No, I mean...
Yeah, that was the first obstacle, wasn't it, for Joe Biden? Not sure he would have handled that obstacle.
Hey, let it play, and Ian and I can talk over it. You just can turn the sound off here, because it's just the jet engine roaring in the background there. As Trump descends the stairs, makes it... without falling.
Look how much concentration he's putting into that. He's already said on numerous occasions that he considers that to be very high stakes when he goes up and downstairs. So he's obviously he's just sort of got one thought in his mind, which is one foot in front of the other.
And you can see Elon Musk there in the background. I think Yahoo's going to circle. Oh, I thought they did circle it, but Elon Musk in the background and Jensen Huang there as well. But that with them is Tesla, NVIDIA, Apple, BlackRock, Boeing, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, GE, Qualcomm, Micron, Cargill. Like I said, when he goes there, he takes some of the big, most powerful heavy hitters when it comes to industry. And he did the same thing when he went to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East there. and they go there and they actually ink lots of deals. Last time Boeing went to, I think it was in the Middle East there. What did they ink, like, I don't know, a few $100 billion worth of deals there?
Well, all these companies pretty much are elbows deep into China, aren't they? They're all, once upon a time, Donald Trump might have said they're all compromised by China, but obviously now they're all his friends. How times change.
Elon Musk has a Giga Shanghai there, and NVIDIA obviously sells chips around the world, and I know there's some restrictions on some of the chips, therefore.
But he wants them off. They're one of the great mysteries.
Yeah.
He's one of the many voices in the United States that says we've got to go all in on AI, otherwise the dreaded Chinese will catch up with us and beat us. So, no regulations, please. Everything all in on AI. And then with the next breath, he says, oh yeah, but I really want to sell China these extremely high-powered chips for their AI so that they can rival us. I mean, one of the many slippery little shadowy weird facts about Jensen Huang and Elon Musk as well. These people have such weird relationships with China, and it's almost 100% unscrutinized.
Well, one of
not even contemplated for a moment, particularly Elon Musk, who has an absolutely surreal, weird relationship with China.
And a unique one in that, basically, he's the only automaker in China that retained 100% ownership of Tesla. Every other venture there, Ford, GM, the rest of them are all like joint ventures with a Chinese company. Tesla's the only one that is a 100% owned Tesla. But then again, if you look at it, a lot of those Tesla engineers that were working there actually ended up, creating, I think there's almost 100 startup EV companies there, and some of them are doing really, really well. Some of the tech in China, can rival Tesla in some of the regards. I don't know about the autopilot, but some of the stuff they're putting out there scares the heck out of the legacy automakers, like literally has them petrified. And that includes the Japanese.
Yeah, primarily them lately.
And, Trump and Xi there, they're going to, there's lots on the table. They're going to talk about a lot of things. And obviously Iran is going to come into focus, as well as trade, as well as Russia. There's lots on the talk as the two, I guess, and we talked yesterday, hegemons. Really there's only one, but China, looking to rival the U.S. in some regards. The economy is one. China, the manufacturing hub of the world. So everybody goes to make cheap stuff. That's why Apple's there. That's why Tesla's there. Tesla, the factory in Tesla, they bring the guy out of Shanghai there so that he can get the other factories running at the same optimization that they got out of Shanghai. And that's in, Texas and Fremont and in Berlin, because there's no factory that runs at the efficiency rate that it runs in Shanghai.
It's one of the great ironies, isn't it? This is all of these companies, like Nike's another one, but Apple, Tim Apple in particular, who is, when it comes to cultural questions, is an extremist on the progressive left, like a fringe extremist outlier who tries to push cranky ideas on the American people through his company. And then, people who've been observing the scene for a while point out, but you're completely in bed with the Chinese Communist Party, which just murders people willy-nilly. Nobody cares. No due process. It's like unabashedly racist, believes in Han supremacy as a sort of just a fact of life. That is China. It is the Han people. We will send members of our race into parts of our empire and make sure that they displace the other races, because this is a Han country. And then you got Tim Apple shaking all the hands with every Chinese Communist Party member that he can find, and then doing commercials where he lectures the American people on Black Lives Matter or some nonsense like that. That's a bit of a digression, but it just highlights how compromised all these people are, and one of the many, many reasons why you shouldn't take any of them too seriously.
Marco Rubio has been outspoken against China, even to the point where he was sanctioned by China. But they lifted the sanctions so that Marco Rubio could touch down with Air Force One there in China. And if we look back to Canada, we look back to Canada. I mean, our biggest opportunity, I know that the Carney Liberals there, they talk about how we could, do deals with China and that. I mean, what happens here could really put a kink in anything that if America and China come to a big deal, I don't know what that does for Canada's deal with China as well. But I mean, again, China will play a small role in what Canada puts to market. China is not a consumer nation. China is an export nation. But what they do want is energy. That's our big opportunity. That is like massively our opportunity. Like it is like I mean, if you were to look around the room in your house there's a gold statue sitting in the middle of the room, and there's a bunch of other stuff, just like, trinkets and stuff. And you keep like walking past the gold statue and saying, well, we want that. We're gonna concentrate on this broken slinky over here. And it just makes no sense. And here's the head of TC Energy again, just spitting some truth bombs here. Listen up.
An exporter of LNG to Asia. Yet the country is behaving as if being good is good enough. Unacceptable. Germany's Chancellor Merz, India's Prime Minister Modi, and Japan's Prime Minister Takaishi have all expressed that they are hungry for Canada's resources. The urgency is only growing as energy supply is disrupted around the world. But the world is asking, can Canada deliver? With all this momentum, Canada has still fallen behind because Canada has been unable to attract a meaningful share of global investment, because capital goes where it's welcome, and for too long it has not felt welcome here. Because Canada is no longer competing only within its borders or even just across North America. We are competing with the world under a very different set of expectations. So as a result, the U.S. continues to lead in the race to meet global LNG demand, a race Canada should be winning with its proximity to Asia and abundant low-cost natural gas supply. It's why in 2025, the U.S. sanctioned $56 billion of LNG-related projects. Canada made no sanctionings in the same period. In Mexico, through our recently completed Southeast Gateway project, I've seen firsthand how that country is working hard to attract investment. We began construction on our project 8 months after filing for our permits. And in under 3 years from the filing, we put a 700-kilometer subsea pipeline into service with comprehensive environmental reviews. And further, because of their plan to grow, they call it...
we played that yesterday as well. But it's an important point that so many in Canada don't seem to understand the opportunity that's banging on our door, literally trying to kick the door down for energy. We shared with you yesterday, Prime Minister Modi saying, maybe work from home, cut back on fertilizer, cut back on use of currency, don't work from home, all those things to cut back on the use of energy because they are energy poor and they want energy. And right now the Strait of Hormuz is being choked off. And Canada, for 11 years, has willingly choked off its energy, almost into submission. And you have a guy leading, the nation actually elected a guy that in the book Values talks about 80% of it in the ground. Carina Gold, I say that all the time. Carina Gold says we need to landlock those resources, and we're still talking about here, and we're going to show you in a couple seconds, we're still talking about industrial carbon taxes, carbon capture, and all this nonsense about clean, green. And every time Mark Carney and Tim Hodgson take the podium, oil, it seems to be like second, like this, the second nature, second sister. You know what I mean? Just like, it's just like, oh yeah, we have oil too. But we're really focusing on clean, green energy. It's absolutely laughable. Like, it would be different if we were actually China and we were manufacturing solar panels like crazy. But the only solar we get, we're buying the panels from China. Make it make sense.
Yeah. Well, you asked, or you said earlier, you're not sure, or maybe this will have some kind of an effect on Canada. I think you said the meeting of the two big boys. If they chose, if Canada comes up as a subject, which it probably won't, but if it did, they could pretty much do whatever they want with Canada. They can determine if, they could have a conversation that lasts 90 seconds on the subject of Canada, and that could determine our lives here in this country for the next 40 years. That's how powerful they are and how powerless we are. So when people come to you, certain sugar water salesmen, as you would say, snake oil salesmen, come to you and say that Canada's strong, elbows up, it's in our hands, we're going to do it, we're the masters of this land, etc., etc. Just remember that they're lying to you. It's completely false. The United States and China, I mean other countries as well, but primarily those two countries, decide what happens here to an enormous extent. And all you have to do is think about even the Second World War. I know that's in black and white for a lot of people. It's a long time ago, but look what happens when raw power is on display. Look at the way that the big three, the British Empire, the United States, and the Soviet Union in 1945. Look at how they just divided up the world willy-nilly, and literally, and that was 4 decades or more. They made determinations about Poland, about your parents' country there, Hungary. That was all decided there. It's like, yep, okay, Stalin can keep those countries. We'll have this, you have this, and talk about Berlin and Germany. The big boys, they make decisions that affect everybody else. And the sad truth is, there's just nothing that you can do about it. That is what the word hegemon means. This word that Mark Carney never tires of using. If they really are hegemons, as Mark Carney says, then he shouldn't follow up. The next sentence shouldn't be, but Canada is going to hold tight and be strong and independent. You can't be independent in the presence of hegemons. And I don't know, maybe we're going to find out. Well, give it a few weeks, see what comes out of this meeting. Because if there's anything, it could well be the case that Mark Carney and the Liberal Party's grand strategy with China of going there to Beijing and that little deal that they did with China, it could be possible that in 2 sentences, Donald Trump kills that. That could happen. And it could turn out that, no, actually, we're not going to get any Chinese cars. And the Chinese aren't going to suspend tariffs on canola products or whatever it is. That could happen. So, let's wait and see. But that's the extent to which we are passengers in this car.
And the even more confusing or complicated or just like head scratcher or just complete nonsense is our only real strength is energy. That's the only trump card we literally have to pay. That's the only one we have in our hand. If when Trump says we have all the cards, we have one card. We have one card in its energy and our resources. That's the cards we have. Those are the cards we have. And this guy's saying we refuse to play it, right? And then they just say, well, like TC Energy says, well, we'll just go south then. It's easier because they can be mobile, right? When you have billions of dollars, other nations open the door. Other nations open the door. And we're going to show you later, even forestry companies, or Canadian companies, many of Canada's best companies have gone south. Many of Canada's brightest minds have gone south. Why? Lack of leadership, conflicted leadership, bad leadership, sugar water salesman. You know what I mean? But it all comes down to leadership, and it's lacking. Like they said, the old British saying is, they've been weighed and measured, and they've come up short for Canada. And we're going to show you some stuff in the next little while. Is this like unheard of bankruptcies are being filed in Canada here, in one of the richest resource nations in the world, and yet the corrupted media here in the national media. And I got some ideas on how we're going to change that. And Ian and I are going to chat about it after. We're going to do some stuff, and you can be a part of that too. We're going to try and create a national network of news here. We're going to reach out and see if we can get something going here. It's absolutely crazy here that this voice needs to be a lot louder than it is, because Canadians need to wake up to the reality of the truth. And it's enough of nonsense, enough of the nonsense. And how many people need to suffer? How many people need to suffer in food bank lineups and stuff in a nation as rich as this, while the elites party like it's like crazy, and they just take money like hand over fist out of the government coffers. It's absolutely crazy. And here's another example of what this is. And a food professor pointing out, Ottawa close to reaching industrial carbon pricing deal. And we said this, I think, last week, that they're likely going to reach a compromise. They're likely going to reach a compromise because that's what it's all about with them, right? They don't want to lose in this, and it's likely going to keep that industrial carbon tax there, and they're going to kick the numbers down the road. But it doesn't entice companies to invest. The tanker ban, all these things, all the regulation that needs to be removed, they don't do it. And there's going to be some compromise, and this might end up hurting Danielle Smith as well, because I don't think a lot of people in the separatist movement are going to be happy with the compromise. So,
but yeah, I mean, and it is a compromise, isn't it? And I think the reason this might have been, I mean, if Danielle Smith had achieved this a few years ago, I think it would have been, she would have been transported through the streets of Edmonton like Caesar Augustus. There'd have been rose petals thrown as she was brought down in a carriage pulled by horses. But no, it's 2026 now. Trudeau was chased out of power because he wasn't, I mean, let's just say it, he was an absolute idiot. He was a complete fool who misunderstood his own country, misunderstood the world, didn't even try to understand economics, etc., etc., etc. Complete buffoon. We can say that now because everybody says that, even though we thought that before it was cool. But this is Mark Carney in power. This is the second global energy crisis in the space of 4 years. This is great power rivalries and the breakdown of the old American-led international order. This is, I mean, there's no point in listing it. We've all had our eyes open, haven't we, in the last few years? This is a different time. And the oil companies, they've started to bare their teeth for the first time in a long time. They're no longer on a leash and being tame little poodles. They're actually starting to look like self-interested parties with spines for once. And they're starting to say, why should I do this when you're going to punish me when I could go to Mexico and make absolutely scads of money and not be sort of slapped around and told that I'm a bad person by a finance guy, as we were saying yesterday, like somebody with no moral credibility whatsoever, to be lectured by somebody like that. Like, piss off. No, I'm just going to go to Mexico. I'm just going to go to the US. I'm going to go somewhere else because this is stupid. And the Canadian government is being pushed by international organizations like the International Energy Agency, by every country in the world pretty much, China even, East Asia, Europe. They're all saying, come on, pull your finger out, do something. So in that context, it's no longer a great victory, is it, for Danielle Smith and the oil industry? And if they agree this, it almost looks like, well, hold on, like, you had a much stronger hand and you've given in. You've given them way more than really they're entitled to based on the distribution of power right now. So yeah, I think that is, in a nutshell, what it is, isn't it? That's what it boils down to. But Danielle Smith is obviously very, very shrewd and very intelligent. So I would assume she's going to have a very, very good argument for why this makes sense. And it won't be something stupid like, we've got to make sure that we're on the right side of future governments. I don't think it'll be anything like that. I think it'll be quite sneaky, and it'll be $130 by 2040 de jure, but de facto it will be like it is now, which is like nowhere near that. It's nowhere near what it's supposed to be, is it? The price that it trades for. So she'll be able to say, like, look, in reality, it's actually a lot lower than that. So chill out.
Thank you to Kanata there for that contribution to independent media. It's time for us to take it to the next level too. So we're going to do the best we can and get this word out as far and wide as possible. And the sad thing is, even the Danielle Smith deal, like she said, once they get, approval, the MOU signed, and then maybe it's another 2 years, she said, to get an approval, and then stick a shell. Like, I mean, it's like forever in today's world when people are screaming for energy. Well, India is talking about people not going out. You know what I mean? Like it's not traveling and doing different things. The opportunity is now. The opportunity is now. Like they're basically kicking down the door. And if Canada doesn't want to answer the door, Venezuela sure will answer the door. I mean, it's a huge opportunity right now for Venezuela. They just got their country back. It's an absolute massive opportunity for Venezuela. And will the Chevrons of the world go there instead? Will TC Energy go there instead? Because they only have so much capital to deploy. Mark Carney's already chosen where he's Brookfield's company's going. Brookfield is going to build 8 nuclear reactors in the United States of America. 8 nuclear reactors with Westinghouse. That's a joint venture with Brookfield and Cameco. They've already chosen. So they have capital that they're deploying down there. So no announcements here. And here's our friend.
Global Traveller, I think just before we move on, Global Traveller's made an excellent point about the asset masters, the financial wizards of the world who, Mark Carney represents. He says they were the thug enforcement and censorship arm of the kind of climate activism. I wouldn't change a word of what you said there. It's completely true. But yeah, it was like the likes of BlackRock and all these ESG purveyors who they invented this entire shadowy superstructure behind the scenes in the world of finance to impose an ideological vision of the world, and they refuse to give money. And you get these absolute clowns who come out now. You see them on Twitter, but even in the Liberal Party and NDP, they come out and say, "Oh yeah, all the investment. Look at these charts that show investment in energy over the last however many years, and it's all in renewables. Yeah, you don't want to be trapped in the past." It's like, why do you think that is? Because it wasn't possible to get capital. It wasn't possible to actually do this because the financial wizards that control the universe said no. The Mark Carneys, the Larry Finks, all of these strange, insanely powerful people went absolutely all in on the ESG bollocks. And that can't be ignored. And Global Traveller is saying that he's saying that in defense of the oil companies who played along. And yeah, I get that. But I totally understand that. I know how cooperation works. It's not just yourself that you're looking out for. So you can't always say what you want to say. But at the same time, they were awfully acquiescent and supine, weren't they? They were quite spineless. But I accept what you're saying. They didn't really have a choice. If they wanted to try and survive, they kind of had to be, didn't they?
And the big point there, the big and is if you take out the government contributions in the United States, Canada, everywhere to these green schemes and these green technologies, it would be minuscule compared to what they're showing you. Most of that investment came straight out of the taxpayers' pockets. And right now they're showing that in the United States. Many of the Chinese companies that came to the United States of America to invest in green screen technologies, Trump took away all the incentives, and they're saying they're packing their stuff up and they're going home because the stuff doesn't survive in just a free market. They relied on the incentives. And they're still doing this here in Canada. We just gave away $200 million, a cheap loan to a few Liberal insiders for a wind farm off the east coast of Canada. It's just insiders and elites that take money from the taxpayer. I mean, if this stuff is that great, like Tesla, if it's that great, then great, people will adopt it. People will buy it when it's great. But this forcing it on people and ignoring the golden statue that sits in the middle of the room, you keep walking around it and pretending you don't see it, or you just spit on it. I don't know what you do with it, but how many people suffer because you refuse to utilize Canada's riches and while you stuff your pockets? And like the people that are standing in food bank lineups and that are, can't meet their monthly obligations. Half of Canadians now are living paycheck to paycheck. And, there's only one place to look, and yet somehow they've been bamboozled into thinking that this government is actually saving them. 14 months later, same stuff, getting worse, getting worse, getting worse. And the thing that could save us, our energy, our resources, continue to get suppressed. Here's Franco. We've had Franco on the show. I think it's about time to get Franco back, talking about the industrial carbon tax in a common sense way. Take it away, Franco. We've heard this before, but it's important to hear it again.
There is no escaping the fatal flaw of carbon taxes, regardless of what you call that carbon tax. A carbon tax that makes life more expensive in Canada will not reduce emissions in places like China, India, Russia, or the United States. So a Canadian carbon tax won't fix the issue of global emissions. About 70% of countries do not impose national carbon taxes, according to the World Bank. But all Canadians really need to do to understand this fatal flaw of carbon taxes is look south to our biggest economic competitor. Regardless of who is in the White House, whether it's a Republican like Trump or Bush, or a Democrat like Biden or Obama, the White House is not imposing carbon taxes. Getting rid of the consumer carbon tax was only half the job. The government needs to end its hidden carbon taxes, including the industrial carbon tax, for the same reasons it needed to end the consumer carbon tax.
So obvious, yet for some strange reason, the Liberals seem to want to die on that hill, or want you to die on that hill, because it's not affecting them. I mean, they're taking home, they just took a big fat raise home as they increased the industrial carbon tax. They took home a big fat raise, all of them, and they party on the taxpayer dollar like it's crazy. We got a guy in the U.S. there, an ambassador there, living in a penthouse in Central Park there for $8.8 million, a $4,700 coffee machine, while Canadians struggle to buy basic necessities here. Isn't that, I mean, it's just crazy. And then the government's answer to that is we need to stop sharing that information because it angers Canadians. That's the response. That's the response from the government, is like we need to stop allowing that information to get out there. Like Mark Miller says, social cohesion is important. So, we need to suppress stuff that makes the Liberals look bad. Really?
Trust in institutions is important. Therefore, we can't tell people what we're up to. Otherwise, they'll lose trust.
That's the logic. That's the bloody logic. And talk about misinformation, disinformation. They always say they want to stop misinformation, disinformation. I mean, there's some people saying this channel is getting suppressed. Maybe, because it just spits truth. Here's Catherine McKenna. Facts. She starts with facts. Facts. Canadian taxpayers bought pipeline producing for Alberta crude. Oil sands are among the world's most expensive and carbon-intensive barrels. If sector can't compete after massive public subsidies, problem isn't climate policy. Money is moving to clean energy BC. What? What? Money is moving to clean energy BC. That's where the growth is. It's just, I mean, I don't even know what, like a grade 4, probably, like elementary school student would say, like, this doesn't make any sense. And of course, Heather Exner-Perot is spit some facts back at her, but they've been getting away with this. There's, some voices now are starting to like rise above this. And thank God for X, because if it wasn't for X, there's no way CBC's putting Heather's response to Catherine McKenna's facts, right? Facts, right? Facts.
Also, talking about this argument about emissions and the oil sands high emissions or whatever. We talked about this. 0.1% of world emissions. That's 1/10 of 1%. And this is something that stresses out this woman on a daily basis, apparently. She's sat there pulling her hair out about that. There's only two possibilities here. Either, I'm talking about Catherine McKenna, either she is stupid or she's operating under the assumption that the Canadian people are stupid. I can't see a third option. It has to be one of those.
We have to remember, she said, if you say something loud enough, often enough, people will actually believe it. That was what she said in a bar, and we have that clip if we want to play it again. We've played it enough times, though. She said that. Just say it loud and get your media slaves to say it for you. Louder and louder, and people will actually start to believe their nonsense. And the question you have to ask you is, does Canada continue to want to let the elites continue to run this country, and so many Canadians have to suffer while so few prosper? Is that Canada? Is that what Canada is supposed to be?
But also these people who are doing this describe themselves hilariously. I just find it so funny. They describe themselves as progressives. What are you progressing towards? Are you progressing towards an era where we don't have light? We can't move around in vehicles. Like, what are you doing? Fossil fuels and energy. Like, energy is the main restriction on technological advancement, pretty much. I think you can say that safely. It's the main restriction on producing more food, more heat, more electricity, bigger things, better things. You know, so many things that, if you've ever read about fusion power and the race to create fusion power, and you look at the rationale, a lot of that list, the rationale is, because then we could do loads of things. We can become a much more technologically advanced civilization because we'll have more energy. And then we have these people calling themselves progressive saying, no, less energy, less reliable energy. That's the future. What future? I mean, this is why, quite obviously, this is why a lot of people refer to them as regressives rather than progressives. But I suppose you could also argue that progress is, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going somewhere better. You could be progressing to something worse, couldn't you? It's just a kind of temporal distinction.
Like a fundamental of any economy is energy. Like the fundamental, like if you ever do the equation, you need energy. There is no economy without energy. There is no people without energy. And right now, the most important piece of energy out there in the world is the one that they target most of the time. It's diesel. Look at the price of diesel in Canada right now. Diesel. Diesel is what powers tractors, trains, transport trucks, and super tankers and ocean liners. Diesel. There is no substitution for diesel. And it's also what powers many things in the north in big generators, right? Like that's what some people, they actually rely on it for the lights in their home. Diesel. And yet...
I wish people would read Václav Smil. You don't even have to leave the borders of this country. He is the best writer on this subject that I'm aware of anyway. And he doesn't really have a horse in the race. He's just a beloved, nerdy professor that likes to calculate megajoules and things and loves his charts. Just read anything by him. I'm almost like begging you. Just read something by him. And then you will understand how insane and how misanthropic people like Catherine McKenna actually are.
So the Liberals and the Democrats are very much linked. And the Democrats have a huge influence. We saw that with Obama and Buttigieg here in Canada just recently. They were trying to sell you the dream of electric tanks because, you don't want to get killed by a diesel tank. You want to get killed by an electric tank because then you feel much better about yourself. They're trying to sell that nonsense. Sugar water salesman, snake oil salesman, just nonsense, just bloody nonsense. And the Liberals and the Democrats sell nonsense. They sell ideology. At the same time, they stuff their literal pockets. Look at all the fraud in the United States and look at all the fraud happening here in Canada. They literally raid the taxpayer coffers, send money willy-nilly everywhere and with kickbacks. Nobody has any accountability when it gets sent off. Hundreds of millions of dollars sent off for gender-affirming rice or ski schools in Lebanon, for equality. And you know what I mean? Like some of the stuff, they just make it up. They just literally make up absolute nonsense. And there's no way to check where the money goes. Like almost $25 billion has now gone to Ukraine, where fraud has been, I think Rubio says 30% of that is being milked off. And we just saw another Zelensky's second in command now with $100 million that he siphoned off. That's what they're catching. Imagine what's actually happening. That's I think the second person in Zelensky's close circle that's been like grifting off of that money. And Canada's, we were told here that we can't have accountability because it's a national security issue, right? So Chrystia Freeland, the Canada's best economic advisor, apparently, is now over there in Ukraine advising them on their economy and looking after that bag of money. And then she doesn't come isn't held accountable in any media in Canada here. And she's on all the finance networks in the United States fundraising for Ukraine. That's one thing they've done there very well, is fundraise for Ukraine. And again, how many of the elite in Ukraine have done extremely well? Well, the young men and women are asked to cough up their lives for some people to get extremely rich. To increase the Canadian exports, Liberals claim of boost to non-U.S. exports, really just story of oil and gold. So in spite of all the liberal interference, the price of gold has gone through the roof and the price of oil through the roof. So in spite of all the liberal interference, Canada still has, you know what I mean? There's such strength in our resources, in our gold, in our, like in our oil, in our gold. There's such strength in it. It's like, this powerful plant, and the liberals just keep trying to whack it down. But despite all the negativity on it, it still shows. It's still one of the biggest contributors to Canada's economic strength. And it's just the price of gold is like a big part of it. And that was we saw that with the strength in the economic export numbers, gold. And it's because gold is like, right today, what's gold today? Like in Canadian dollars, $6,000. I don't know what it is right today. Like, let's just take a look here real quick. Gold today, $4,700 US, $6,400 Canadian. It's not too long ago that gold was $1,200. So in spite of the liberals, bad policy, bad leadership, just imagine if it had good leadership. Imagine if it said, if we had leadership that said, oh my God, look at these assets here. Look at this statue of gold, as Ian said before. The gold coins laying on the floor. What if we just started saying, we should start picking up these gold coins. We should start picking them up off the ground. Daniel Smith, trillions of dollars beneath the feet of Alberta in just oil. All that and more. Just imagine, maybe we could take some of those people out of the poverty line or the food bank lineups, and we could tell Canadians that they don't have to be worried that they're not going to make next month's obligations. Wouldn't that be a better tomorrow for all of Canada, not just the elites?
But I mean, hungry people famously don't tend to want to pick up gold coins lying on the floor so that they can exchange them for food. Obviously. Well, I mean, why would we do that? Why would any hungry individual pick up gold on the floor to buy food with it? Well, but we're in a position where, I mean, that's not quite an accurate analogy, is it? We're hungry, we want to pick up the coin, but the nobleman steps off his giant horse, steps off his chariot and says, no, don't pick up that gold coin. That would offend the gods. It's just like, but I'm hungry, my lord.
Again, some good news. Agnico Eagle, one of Canada's largest Canadian mining companies, is going to make a huge investment in Ontario. Again, in spite of the Liberals, right? In spite of the Liberals. And it's because of the price of gold. And that has nothing to do with Canada, the price of gold. And Canada, again, famously, the only G7 nation in the world to not have any gold. Because they said, Tiff Macklin, and Mark Carney was part of that when he was the Bank of Canada governor, said the gold was an antiquated asset and doesn't generate income. Really? Looks like it's done okay.
It's worth looking at that Bloomberg article again, though, because the point of that is we don't like the Liberals have been hyping this shift to non-US markets, like it's working, guys. Believe us. Bloomberg's looked at it and they've just said, no, it isn't. It's completely false. It's just gold. I mean, and some of it it even says here, some of the gold counted among Canada's exports isn't even leaving the country. But they've just fiddled it somehow. It's changed owners and it's for some reason that qualifies as an export. And then the other thing is oil. This is not an economy that's readjusting to the world away from the United States. It's still absolutely the same. It says it's flat relative to December 2024. So it's flat going back to before the trade war. Nothing's changed.
More misinformation, disinformation, and basically lies and manipulation of the Canadian public. Again, Mark Carney, I mean, how much more proof do you need? Affordability has never been so good in the last decade. For who? You need to finish that sentence. Affordability has never been so good in the last decade for the Liberal Party elites. Then maybe okay. At least then there would be a truth to that. And I just wanted to highlight something is because actually, I want to go down to where Lily put out this piece here. Is that will Mark Carney face the same political fate as Keir Starmer? Let's play this clip here on Keir Starmer here, as because that's who Mark Carney hangs with. Keir Starmer, they text each other. Remember he said we text each other all the time? In the Finnish guy and Macron, the macaroni man, and Starmer here. Starmer looking like. Let's play the clip anyway. Let's play this clip here from GB News.
SNP that they are going to force a vote on the Prime Minister's future in an amendment to the King's speech. There will be that debate this afternoon. Are you hearing any more from the Scots Nats?
Yeah, this is something that the Scottish Nationalist Party will do to embarrass the government, quite frankly. It is overwhelmingly unlikely that any large number of Labour MPs at all would vote against their own government, would vote no confidence in the government, would vote against the King's speech. That's seen to be a confidence motion if you're to vote against the King's speech, and it would mean surely that any SNP MP, any Labour MP who voted with the SNP on that would lose the whip and therefore lose their important role in any future leadership contest. Of course, if you have the whip withdrawn from you as a Labour MP, you can no longer nominate individuals.
I mean, they're starting to get some resignations there in the Labour Party. So the clock ticks for Keir Starmer.
Well, the main guy that's challenging him is the fellow Wes Streeting. He's the one that's seems to have the biggest base of support. Wes Streeting is just an absolute non-entity of a creature, spent his entire life in politics, knows nothing, has done nothing, is basically a child, but for some reason thinks that he can be the Prime Minister. I mean, that in itself is like the epitaph of Britain. This country that used to be, it just breaks your heart, doesn't it? Like, there are people alive today who were born when Britain was the world's most powerful country, the biggest empire in the history of the world, that just did everything, invented everything, controlled everything. And this is what it is now. I mean, it's just so pathetic. It is so pathetic to look at this
Similar
country
policies, similar nonsense as they abandon the North Sea as well. And if you look at Mark Carney's actions 14 months in, and we talked about it yesterday, to him, financialization is everything. Financialize this, that was net zero, GFANS, all that. Financialize this. To everything, he's got a hammer. And his hammer is financialization. To him, everything's a nail. And here's another one. This is the Conservative Party pointing out that they're really pushing to get this World Climate Bank, right? This bank they want to kick off here, and Canada leading this too, right? To take money and do this World Bank climate initiative focusing on global transition away from fossil fuels and gender equality gaps in small island developing states. Everything to him is financialization. And just, I don't know where Canada gets more money. We're a debtor nation right now, which is sad. Canada is a debtor nation. And don't compare us to the United States, because the United States is in a unique position to have the world's reserve currency, so they can actually export their inflation. Canada is not nobody holds Canadian reserves other than, for trade balance and that. It's not like, oh yeah, we have a ton of Canadian reserves. No. But what is
this is literally fiddling while Rome burns, isn't it? It's just.
And again, fiddling with what you know. It's financialization of everything. Everything to him is financialization. Look at the people he's installed. Look at the people. There's bankers. He put a banker in, Tim Hodgson banker. He put a banker in charge of procurement of our military equipment. And they asked him, do you have any experience in military? No. Do you have any experience at all in anything? No. And his salary, I can't remember what it is, like $676,100. Well, 100 is a puzzle. He said he didn't negotiate. That's what they offered him. And banker after banker after banker. More bureaucracy. How many new offices opened up? The Crown Corporation opened up for housing. How much housing is built? Right. Nothing to speak of. Nothing to speak of. It reminds me of an old Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing, I do nothing, I know nothing. And so what does the media machine do? As the attention focuses on Carney and some of the bad economic numbers, who do they go after? Well, let's put a panel together and go after Pierre Poilievre. Why not, right? Let's focus the attention on why Pierre Poilievre is not ever destined to be the Prime Minister of Canada. We need to keep the current Prime Minister. Listen to this.
A lot of panels, Fancy, but like, what do you do if you're Pierre Poilievre again? And this is the thing you said a month ago in your speeches that was kind of, by some people, criticized at the time. And obviously it's two different people delivering the message, but it is essentially the same thing.
I guess he could try to sue Carney for plagiarism, but it didn't work last year, Vashi, when the Liberals ripped off the Tory manifesto. And so many things that the Prime Minister has done successfully are things that he cribbed from the poor, embattled Conservative leader. I don't know what Poilievre does. If I'm him, I'm thinking my biggest priority right now is holding on to the job that I have, not the job that I want, because this time next year, will he still be the Conservative leader? I don't know. I'm not sure I'd take that bet if I had Tom's 25 cents.
And Tom, what do you think about that? Tom?
I think that his chances of staying on as leader until the next election are slim. Just talking with people who are conservatives, some of whom worked for him, tried to help get him elected leader, they've come with regret to the conclusion that Pierre Poilievre is not going to be the Prime Minister of Canada.
That's good.
And
it's just odd, no? That instead of talking about issues that matter, like, like our economy and Mark Carney's conflicts of interest, and Mark Carney's got nothing done, their focus is on why Pierre Poilievre should never be Prime Minister of Canada. Odd.
Also, just the way that they sort of giggle about him. We got Boya here praising Vassie, I think, but she's quite bad for that. Where she does kind of chuckle and giggle. She doesn't take him seriously, and that's almost one of the things that they all do. It's almost like high school bullies or something. They just like, Pierre. And, the way that they treat him in the gallery as well, compared to how they treat Carney. Carney is like a figure that deserves respect. He's like a prestige politician, and they speak, even when he does something just unfathomably stupid and dishonest, like create the sovereign wealth fund. That is none of those things. They still treat him very seriously, don't they? It's still like an earnest criticism. It's like, well, I'm not entirely sure that this is 100% accurate to call it a sovereign wealth fund. But when it's Poilievre, it's just like, this pillock again. They just sort of, they don't take him seriously, and that's kind of one of their weapons that they deploy against him.
And here's some more truth bombs. This is from the food professor. Remember when this trade war, Trump started throwing these tariffs around, and the simple reason why tariffs had little effect on food prices in the U.S., why they didn't see huge jumps, and Ottawa's did, is because it's two different nations. One is huge and diverse and has tons of competition, and one doesn't. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? And he says they should know that, yet they did it anyway. And who felt the pain? You, the Canadian taxpayer. The Canadian felt the pain at the grocery store. And then their elbows up, they had their elbows up, and everybody's saying like, hit them with tariffs, hit them with tariffs. And the Canadian taxpayer or the Canadian consumer went to the store and paid more. And then they quietly removed the tariffs without even telling anybody. I mean, it's so deceptive. Like, it's deception after deception, misinformation after misinformation. It's just constant. And, someone just said in the comments that this show is like a bunch of, bitching and moaning, but it's his favorite show. Imagine if the media did its job instead of cheerleading. Would you rather us cheerlead? Come on here, and it's just like 3 hours of Mark Carney is the greatest guy ever, elbows up, and Donald Trump is whatever he is, and Orange Man bad. Is that you want to listen to that? Because you get that at CBC almost any time. You get that at CBC on a regular basis. You get that over there. Orange Man bad
everywhere, really. Don't have to look far.
Here's a truth bomb, and this is the thing. This is the thing, like, if you have no empathy at all, and you don't give a shit about half the Canadians that are suffering, and that means a lot of other Canadians are suffering. If half the Canadians are at the line of not making their monthly obligations. There's more than that are just near that are near struggling. Like I don't talk to too many people unless they're working for the government or elite that are doing extremely well. There's a few. That top 2-3% are doing extremely well. But here, listen to this clip here. As 37,000, the most bankruptcies in a while here. Listen.
Welcome back. More Canadians filed for insolvency in the first 3 months of this year than in any other quarter since the global financial crisis.
There's a growing concern more households are carrying too much debt and having difficulty paying their bills. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat?
Thanks, Pauline and Sean. The latest numbers are concerning because they show many Canadians are feeling the strain of mounting debt, inflation, and increases in the cost of living. The three main factors hurting budgets the most are housing, car loans, and the rising cost of food. According to the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, more than 37,000 Canadians either filed a consumer proposal or declared bankruptcy during the first 3 months of this year. That's an increase of 8.5% over the same period in 2025.
I'm not surprised by these numbers.
Affordability's never been so good in the last decade. What the heck is that? What is that? Does it make sense?
It must be. Is this Trump? Or is this Russia?
Could be.
Maybe it's both of them together.
We've been, are you going to play affordability? Go ahead and play.
Yeah, I can hear Mark Carney's opinion.
Give her. Let's hear from the boss himself.
Affordability's the best it's been in over a decade.
And right next to him is Michael Ma, the pillar of democracy here in Canada.
And I think you can hear Steve McKinnon's hooligan voice. They're going, hear, hear.
And they just lie straight to your face. They just lie straight to your face. And at the same time, ship money by the scads, as Anita and Ann and them, just ship money by the scad, the truckloads, to other nations. Like Canada's in a position to be this great nation of giving, so they can, I don't know, backdoor it. Like what is going on? Like how many millions and billions of dollars do we ship off somewhere else? While Canadians stand in record numbers in food bank lineups. I mean, how do you ignore that? And how does the media ignore it? Like I think I've interviewed, I think his name is Jeanette from MMP a couple times, trustee insolvency over the past year. And these numbers were irrelevant then. They're talking about how bad it is for Canada. And they just ignored it. And they paint over it. And I don't understand how the majority of Canadians say this is a good path that we're on. Here's the path that may be coming for you. Is the King Darling read his throne speech there. Listen up here. Digital ID, as he read it out there.
My ministers will also proceed with the introduction of digital ID that will modernize how citizens interact with public services.
Nice
How
outfit.
funny is that?
Hey, nice outfit.
How funny is his accent?
Hey? He's got the...
We want to make sure what you're doing on the internet, you naughty, naughty peasants.
Social cohesion. Imagine Mark Carney thinking, I could get a robe like that. Why not?
He needs a hat like that, doesn't he?
Who doesn't want a hat like that? And then here's the thing, and they get busted for this again, but Mark Carney's Liberals unveil Canada's most ambitious housing plan since Second World War. And nice slogan, nice little thing there. And the reality, not so much, right? Federal managers sought to copy Liberal Party website and promoting housing program, and that's from access to information records. Opposition MPs have complained numerous federal departments are in breach of a directive stating taxpayer funding advertising must be free of partisan references. I believe the Liberals think there is only one party in Canada, and they're entitled. To them, it's just, why would we have that rule? We are the party. We are Canada.
We are the government, you know. Even if we're not in power, we still are.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, they don't care. The rules don't matter. It's clear the shape of a home comes directly from the Liberal video, Building Canada Strong. How much is being built? And then yesterday, I think Mark Carney, they keep clarifying their message. They went from, like, you know, how they're going to get first-time home buyers in there. Now they're talking about, well, it's going to be mostly rental homes and shoeboxes and you know, like prefab boxes. Because who doesn't want a box? Because the king dog.
They're not going to look like those houses, are they?
They're going to look like a stacked box.
They're going to be like 3 floors. Yeah, like you wish they looked like that, even though these are quite ugly, weird-looking houses. But at least they look quite big.
Well, they might as well just take a picture of like an ocean liner with all the sea cans on it and say, condo complex.
Formerly home to 1,000 pounds of fentanyl, now it could be your home.
But they just don't care. This is from Hollywood and Blacklocks. They just put it out there and say, well, what's the big deal? Even though there's a rule against it, what's the big deal? I mean, we are the government. And then the
it's
leader.
only bad if the Tories do it because they're the pretenders.
Yeah.
You know, they're the claimants to the throne. They are the riffraff on the outside of the walls, of the castle walls. If the Liberals do it, it's fine because the Liberals that's the one true dynasty that rules this kingdom. You know, they are the rightful kings. That's how they see it, and that's how this society, which they set up and authored in the 20th century for the most part, they see it as this is theirs. This is their environment. This is their world. This is their country, and they could do whatever they want, and they can do whatever they want because they don't get punished for it.
Apparently. I just want to do a little plug here. The Really Big Show is on every weekday morning, 9 a.m. PST. Even when we're sick and you know, under the weather, we're still here, spitting truths. But we also have a guest today at 11 o'clock, Brian Isted, former Canadian Army captain, military intelligence analyst. He's coming on the show to talk about the state of the Canadian military. So that should be an interesting discussion. Brian Isted, 11 o'clock. And depending on where we're at, we're going to bring him into the show or we're going to stop and redo it, whatever. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I think we're going to go to that commercial break, actually, what we did last time, and we'll bring him in, and then we'll go again. I think that worked pretty good, eh?
Yeah.
The leader of the Quebec Separatist Party says he's worried about Ottawa spies. So we got Chinese spies, we got Ottawa spies. The leader of the Separatist Party, Quebecois, has said he's worried about federal government spying on his party, and that's Paul St. Pierre. Palomadome, come for the pronunciations, said he has no proof of any espionage taking place. But he said, we know that each decade the government of Canada has taken ethically and legally very questionable steps to monitor elected PQ members. It's much easier than back in the day when someone had a tape recorder, had to tape a tape recorder to their stomach. But, you know, I wouldn't put it past him. Getting pretty stormy out there, actually, eh? Cloudy and sucked in and windy.
This chap, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, he's actually quite smart in my humble opinion. And he speaks very good English. He's like, you know, I know you're quite a fan of Blanchette for his manner and his intelligence or whatever it may be. I actually think this chap is brighter than Blanchette. And he's like a very or he's quite an impressive politician. But I would also just say, he's talking about they're spying on us. Yeah, they have done that in the past, for sure. They had a member of the PQ was an RCMP informant, wasn't he? Can't remember that guy's name. That's like a massive scandal. I think that that's probably what's in his head primarily, that case. But also, wouldn't you expect this to be the case? Like, Quebec is all important to the Liberal Party, which is a Liberal Party is another term for the government of Canada, of course. Yep. It's synonymous with the government of Canada, the Laurentian elite or whatever. They look at Quebec as essential, absolutely impossible to imagine not having Quebec. So if they see a threat to that nation, like separatism, they're gonna spy on you. They really are, and I'm sure they're spying on the Alberta separatists as well. Kind of what they do.
Without Quebec, the Liberals don't exist. They are an NDP party.
Yeah, well, it's not even just that. It's like, it is actually sentimental, I think, for them as well. It's like, it's the heart of it all. It's that's where that's where everything they love lives and belongs, and that's like their origin story. So I don't think they could handle it, even though I think quite a lot of other provinces in Canada would be quite happy to see Quebec go, but that's a different story.
Well, that Liberal MP, Nate Erskine-Smith, tells Vassy one way or another he's going to resign. So he's hanging on to his seat right now. He's supposed to resign. But again, the party is more important than, like ethics. You're listening with Vassy here.
You said, you mentioned cabinet there for a second. You said in February when a by-election was called, you'd be, quote, all in Ontario politics and that you'd resign your seat. At the time, I remember very clearly you cited the fragility of the minority government. Look at what's at stake here in Ottawa. You said every vote counts. Your party now has a majority. Are you going to resign your seat?
Yes. Yes. I said what I said, and I'm going to stand by what I said. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. I've talked to the Prime Minister's office. I've been in fairly regular touch. They asked me to stay on, so I stayed on. I mean, you can say I'm not a team player, but I put myself through a lot, in some cases, quite a lot of criticism in order to make sure we supported a really tough parliamentary minority. We're in an easier space now, and the last conversation I had with the Prime Minister's office was, I'll give a farewell speech in June, and I'll resign over the summer, and they'll have.
That guy, he's so likable, isn't he? You just look at the way he speaks, like, just his lovely, friendly face, really nice demeanor. What a lovely man.
I got one more for you, because it's like what they created also comes back and bites them in the butt. Listen to this here as he complains about the election.
Just a few examples, just so people at home understand.
Right.
Number one, there are 34 more votes in the ballot box than there were recorded voters that were struck off the list as having voted, and the margin of we lost by 19 votes, okay? So on that basis alone, there's a real challenge. But beyond that, the process was full of problems. From people in the ballot box being instructed how to vote, including on speakerphone, including on video calls in the ballot box, getting instructed how to vote while they were marking their ballot. You had instances of individuals using documentation that the party at the outset said they wouldn't accept, lease agreements that included somehow kids under the age of 18 to prove residency. You had one individual vote with an Amazon order as proof of residence. You run down the list, and it was inexplicable at times. And the last key piece to note, I mean, among many pieces of information that came that were frustrating and concerning, but there were countless people, an overwhelming number of people that were there as temporary residents, for sure, and when they were asked where they lived, they couldn't remember their address. They faltered, and then they said, "Oh, here's my identification." Right. And there were dozens and dozens and dozens of people who were taking pictures of their ballot. And the advice that I got from Andreas Katsouris, with this 25 years of experience around the world, he said, "Look, in other jurisdictions, when we see this, it's evidence of vote buying. Ask yourself, why would dozens and dozens and dozens of people who are temporary residents showing up, not understanding the process, when they're asked for their address, they're not certain about what their address is, and then they're taking pictures of their ballot? Ask yourself, why would they be doing it? It's not democracy to see the number of irregularities, to see the party turn a blind eye, I think, unfortunately, to so many of these irregularities.
What's the word that was not? So he did 2 interviews. He did one with CBC, one with CTV. You add them up together, it's something like 30 minutes, 40 minutes of interviews. And those are just the 2 I know about. He's probably done more. He also did a video that he released on his own social media account. What's the one word, do you think, that wasn't mentioned that maybe should have been mentioned? Begins with B. The word is Bangladesh. Why was it not mentioned? It is literally the only word of any importance. whatsoever. It's the only word that matters in this conversation, because he got done by Bangladeshi tribal voting. That very same phenomenon that I talked about in East London, and if anybody was listening, back when Dolly Begum was selected, and I gave her a quick Google and found out that she was from Sylhet. Did a little bit of reading. I already knew this about Scarborough, but I did a little bit more reading about Scarborough, Ontario. Found out it has a very large Bangladeshi population. Sylhet's in Bangladesh, by the way. Then I said, "Oh, gee, I hope it's not going to be the same Sylheti tribal politics that took over Tower Hamlets in East London." Read about it at any website you like. Google it on Tinternet, and you can learn all about the tribal voting system. The way that how in Sylhet, the city in Bangladesh, elections in England are determined. The victors of elections are decided in Sylhet. It's been proved. They literally have the receipts, as they say. And I saw Dolly Begum, saw the demographics of Scarborough. Then I saw this. Turns out he got done by the exact same thing. He got usurped, outmaneuvered by the Bangladeshi tribal voting system. And then he goes on there, he does all these interviews. Alas, my dear Canadian people, he didn't use the word Bangladesh, nor did any of the journalists. You know, look, if you're this naive, if you're this stupid, I'm with the Bangladeshis, I'm with the Sylhetis, because you're too stupid. You are too dumb and stupid to deserve this country and this civilization. If you don't even use that word, you don't even identify what's been done to you, because you're so stupid. You're so feeble. Your entire worldview is so contradictory and ridiculous that you can't even point to the thing that's just done this to you. In that case, get me in with the Sylhetis. That's where I want to be, because at least they're not stupid. You know, that there's nothing as unforgivable as stupidity, is there? Really?
Well, dishonesty.
People who are members of the elite and the responsible class. There's nothing more detestable than stupidity from people in positions of power.
It's the dishonesty. And this is the same thing, again, if we look at the link between the Democrats and the Liberals, where they want people that, to vote, especially in the United States, with no voter ID. You don't have to be a citizen and all these things that are pushing back on these things. And here you got a bunch of people that voted, likely that don't belong to vote. And then you got done in. You got done in because of it. And this is the stuff that you've fostered. You fostered this, and now it's been used against you. You fostered it, and you're too dishonest. I don't know if he's too stupid. He's too dishonest to not point to the actual what happened, because I'm sure he knows what's happened. Because he's kind of like saying it without saying it, right? He's saying it, but he's just too scared of the backlash from just being honest about it. And the same thing goes for the Democrats in the United States. They have been dishonest about the election process. They were dishonest about the borders, and they've been dishonest to the American people. And that same influence that's happening in the United States happens here in Canada. It's the dishonesty of the elites, right? Because they don't care. They don't care about what they do to the communities. They do not care.
But England too, the Labour Party thought that they thought that they could recruit these various ethnic groups onto the plantation, so to speak. That's the terminology used in the United States, isn't it? Because the Democratic Party has done this for forever. The Democrat, they've been doing this since the 19th century. Have a read about them. But in England, they thought, oh yeah, we'll get the Bangladeshi voting bloc. And then we're going to get we'll get the Jamaican, Caribbean voting bloc, and we'll get they thought that they could just collect all these little ethnic groups, let them rule themselves, so to speak. But when the elections came around, the vote would come to the Labour Party. Another example is obviously Pakistani Muslims who've started to defect now from the Labour Party in England. They thought that they could control them, and then when the right, the Conservative Party or any other party said anything about it, complained, they just bashed them as racists and just said, no, you can't talk about that. That's completely off limits. You can't point out the obvious here, that there's tribal voting going on, etc., etc. You can't do it. It's just forbidden in our society. And if you do it, we'll ruin your life. Now we're seeing that the Labour Party's come apart, and these ethnic groups no longer want to remain part of the Labour Party patronage system. They want to establish their own patronage system and have their own parties, their own constituencies. They want to have their own everything. And yes, the Liberal Party as is often the case with Canada, they're a little bit late. They tend to wait 20 years, 30 years sometimes, but they catch up with the British eventually. All the bad things the British do, the Canadians will eventually catch up. And here we are. The Liberal Party thought that they could pander to these groups. They thought that they could get like Dolly Begum or whatever, or they could get, I mean, how many do you want to mention? Another one is our good friend Gary Ananda Sangari. That's a different ethnic group. That's the Tamils. But they thought that they could just collect all of these little ethnicities and they would all loyally vote for the Liberal Party forever. But it turns out that, as is often the case, human beings have minds of their own. They're not going to be loyal to the Liberal Party forever. And this is the Ontario Liberal Party. They've learned this lesson early, but there are many, many more lessons forthcoming, I think.
We interviewed Joseph Barbuto, and he said there'll be an uprising, different parties that'll form. Because you have to ask yourself, is this a legitimate democracy? And look at the parties where they get their power base from. If you look at the Democrats in the United States, look at the power where they get their power from. Look at where they focus, where they get their power and their energy from. They want it from illegitimate voters. So if they're getting it from illegitimate voters, are they legitimate? And the same thing's going on in Canada. Look at all the stuff that they've done here. They bring in, like Melanie Jolie said it in that riding. She said it. The demographics have completely changed in that riding because they imported a whole bunch of people into that riding. They did it, right? They've been jerry-rigging or gerrymandering the elections here in Canada as well. Just different ways.
But look how they fixed the Liberal Party leadership race. They didn't have to deal with the awkward reality of ethnic voting because they got rid of the two members of the of Indian origin. They total BS, total bollocks. They just said, "Nah, you're not going to mess this up. This is Mark Carney's. Like, you're not messing this up." So they just unilaterally brought down the guillotine and just got rid of, what was it, Ruby and Chandra Arya.
Ruby Dahlia.
Yeah, and they just got rid of those people because it would have been too awkward. They didn't want to expose the reality. They didn't want their dirty laundry on display. So they literally just fixed it. And they call, my dear viewer, they call this a democracy. I mean, come on. Do you believe it? Do you believe it, citizen?
So Joseph Barbuto says that there'll be other parties that rise up, and maybe the party will be Jim and Ian. Because, like, is there anybody that is honest? Is there anybody that's honest that is actually going to fight for the Canadian people and the American people? I mean, I think they have somebody there fighting for the American people right now. But, like, the Liberal Party or the Democratic Party in the United States, like, I mean, if that's the best they had to offer was Kamala Harris and just a bunch of, like, nonsense, and Joe Biden was a puppet. Like, who was he installed by? Like, he wasn't even there. Like, I feel sorry for him. Many times I felt cringe. I felt like, holy cow, they're abusing this old man. Like, I mean, it's sad, right? Who's running the country? Maybe it was the guy that was just here visiting, running the country the whole time, the American empire there. And I think half of the thing, this Trump thing, I think half the time the Democrats want Trump to run again so they can run Obama against them because they have nobody. They have nobody to run against Trump or Rubio for that matter.
Did you see that poll the other day? I think it might even have been yesterday. Of all the big names, including Gavin Newsom, number one was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So yeah, they really have nobody.
She's got the I don't know, like she says Elon Musk is a complete fraud, not an engineer, and is a complete fraud. I'm just like, okay, I can't even talk to you anymore. The Ontario Liberal Party leadership hopeful says that Canada should cut its enormous temporary resident population by 80% to substantially reduce asylum, student, and temporary foreign worker quotas. Eric Lombardi said he realizes that likely means a prolonged period of near flat population growth. He added that immigration is not primarily a humanitarian program, but rather a means to ensuring Canada is a prosperous, cohesive, high-trust society. I mean,
pretty interesting, that, isn't it? That's a liberal saying basically end immigration. That's pretty much what he's saying. Or like end immigration as we know it now.
Well,
get rid of all this
wide open doors.
Thing. Yeah.
Wide open doors. I mean, who paid for it? Who paid for it? Who benefited? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Who benefited? Tim Hortons, A&W, Rogers, like, you know, the list it goes on and on. In telecom, like how many of these they got their cheap slave labor? Conestoga College, the president of Conestoga College with a $670,000 salary and $3 million severance. Who benefited? Who paid? Who paid the price? You, the average person, paid the price with no access to health care, free health care. What good is free health care if you can't access? You can't get a scan for 6 months or a year. What good is free health care? And then inflationary numbers, and then, you know, like you can't get rental, you can't rent anything. And the people that are getting asylum are getting way more than a Canadian gets working or on, like, you know, we got people sleeping homeless outside, but they don't get the freebies that the people get that just come to this nation. It's absolutely abysmal.
And it's also what he points out in this long tweet that everybody should read. He points out the obvious about the asylum system and also the student system, and that it's just another way to get permanent residency. It's another path to citizenship that people they look at it almost like as a catalogue. It's like, okay, well, I don't qualify for this, but I can say that I'm bisexual, and I can write a post talking about how Muhammad is like a bad guy, the founder of Islam. He's like, I'll say something really bad about Muhammad or whatever on the internet, and then I'll go and say, look, I can't go back to my country now because I slagged off Muhammad, peace be upon him. You know, it's just become a joke, hasn't it? I mean, obviously. And there's another story, I don't think we're covering it, but there's another story about I think it's Bangladesh as well. Again, Bangladesh, about irregularities in visa processing for Canada in Bangladesh, because believe it or not, some of that's done over there. You know, I mean, the whole system's been gamed. It's been scammed, and this is everywhere, not just Canada. Absolutely not just Canada. I mean, Britain. We talked about that, didn't we? The BBC report recently where people were pretending to be gay and all the rest of it. It's happened all over the place. But for this chap here to point out the obvious, what I'm most interested in, a Liberal's done it. And I just think if the Liberals, again, Ontario Liberal, but if the Ontario Liberals and the Federal Liberal Party, if they fixed that and they became really hard on borders, I don't know, I almost don't want to give them this idea, but they could have a 1,000-year Reich. They could rule forever. I mean, that's pretty much one of the main obstacles now. That's one of the best attack lines that the Conservatives have, and parties of the right in general have, is about immigration. If the Liberals just flipped the switch and said, "Oh no, immigration bad, asylum bad, etc., and totally fix the immigration system," you know, they would remove one of their main weaknesses.
Here comes the United Nations again, interfering in Canadian government. The United Nations has told the Canadian government to eliminate the second-generation cutoff in the Indian Act. Changes to the law in 1985 prevent the transfer of First Nation status to anyone with at least one non-status grandparent or non-status parent. The UN said the cutoff has the effect of forcibly assimilating Indigenous individuals. It will lead to diminishing numbers of persons with legal Indian status who are recognized by Canada as having treaty, Aboriginal, inherent rights, as well as being persons to whom Canada owes a fiduciary duty. Status under the Indian Act confers various benefits and privileges, including certain tax exemptions, health coverage, education support, treaty payments, reserved land rights, and access to certain programs.
Again, I said read that tweet. I'm giving people a long reading list here, but I would implore you to read this article. I think this is Canadian Press. They don't mention that bit at the end there about what the status confers. This is on our website, Kelowna Now. I put that in there because they didn't even explain what it was. The whole article was literally like, and this person says that the government shouldn't do that. Oh, sorry, that the government should eliminate the cutoff. And then this person says they should eliminate, and this person, 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 and it's like they almost make it just seem like an inevitability. It's like who out there doesn't want this to happen? It turns out it's going to cost a lot of money. Obviously, that's why it's a problem. Is that there are certain benefits attached to that status, and that costs money. So that's why you might want to cut it off.
Well, the world's best fundraiser next to Greta, Vladimir Zelensky there. It says he's close to a deal with Canada on drones. Ukraine has begun preparations for a military drone deal with Canada, according to the country's leader. And the deal is very significant expansion of our security cooperation. And the announcement comes the day after Zelensky's former chief of staff, Andrea Yermak, appeared in court of Kiev as a suspect of a $10.5 million laundering scheme. 10.5 million?
She's not. That's a man, isn't it? But there's that woman as well that went on Tucker Carlson's show who said she used to work for Zelensky. She
press
said he's
secretary or press person or something like that, yeah. It's crazy.
But this thing, I mean, as far as Canada's concerned, this is one of the few things that like totally makes sense. Yeah. If Canada can get their drone technology, their drone wherewithal, we can basically skip decades worth of research that we would otherwise have to do, because they are generally considered to be the most sophisticated.
Well, the Americans have been using it as well.
Drone army in the world.
And the Americans, I think a lot of it, Iran has the drone technology as well, and I think the Ukrainians got some of that and just modified it. And
they've worked on it really. They've done a lot of work there though as well, and they've come up with. It's not just the actual technology, but the sort of tactics that they have to fight against drones. Like they've got a good thing going on there. I mean, it's obviously good because they're holding back the Russian army, you know, and they're killing so many Russians, and the Russians can't really take any ground. They're stuck there. Obviously, it's they're not doing that with soldiers and tanks and things. They're doing that mostly with drones. So if we can get some of that, then I think we should.
I actually interviewed a drone pilot right here on this show. It was a number of months ago. He was injured, a former drone pilot in the Ukrainian army. And he showed me some pictures as well from the front lines. This one here from Holly Roan Blacklocks. A national research council yesterday placed a 5-year order for lab rabbits. Not a good day for rabbits, I guess. It's followed a long-running campaign by advocates, including Lorraine Harper and the Humane Society, to curb animal testing in labs. All animals must be delivered in good health and accompanied by a health status report. And that order is worth $1.25 million for these rabbits, male and female, up to 5 kilos, as well as hamsters, mice, and rats. And they say they require these creatures for specific pathogen-free laboratory animals or equivalent required to support approved research protocols.
Poor rabbits. But they do breed like rabbits, so I'm sure we can replace the ones we lose.
I'm going to skip that next story just in the interest of time, but Canada Post yesterday said that $673 million in credit voted by Cabinet March 30 represented a rollover of lapsed loan funding for a total of $2 billion and not the $2.72 billion. The correction came as the Budget Office questioned the scope of service cuts, including rural post office closures. We continue to work closely with the Government of Canada to build a modern post office service that meets the evolving needs of Canadians without burdening taxpayers. You don't think it's a burden, $2 billion? You know, losing, what is it, $10 million a day? Like, it's just crazy numbers. Absolutely crazy numbers. Imagine that if you had a business and you could just lose that much money every day. And you could just phone somebody up and say, send more cash. Hey, send more cash.
Well, you know, there are a lot of special interest groups that do exactly that. Unions, and, you know, we can talk about who does that and does it successfully. The problem with Canada Post is, you know, like the teachers union, they're great at that, aren't they? Because the threat, or the nurses, as we saw yesterday, the threat is with the teachers, that's going to cripple the economy because there'll be nowhere for the kids to go. The parents will have to stay at home and won't be able to work. Lots and lots of work days lost. Nurses, obviously, you can't even dream of running a medical establishment without nurses. It's catastrophic. So it's like they actually have the knife to your throat. Canada Post, on the other hand, would that be the end of the world?
And then this is what another MO for the Liberals, like, just sprinkle enough crumbs out there, just enough crumbs so you have them, you know, at the begging bowl all the time. That's what they've done with media, cripple them and then sprinkle out some crumbs. And this is what they're doing with Wildfire, you know, his AI plan here. They're going to spread $66 million over 44 AI startups for helping fighting fire here in Canada, wildfires. You know, instead of like doing wildfire management and that, I mean, we don't spend a lot of money on wildfire mitigation, but we're going to spend all this money on, you know, startups that, you know, like, you know, some of that's drone technology, but it's not enough money to really make a difference, right? And you're sprinkling it out there just so you have everybody at the begging bowl. And it's just, and again, it's like the GST credit there, and then that $900 for, you know, like certain people below the poverty line, you're going to give them another $900. It's just enough to have people to beg, not enough to make a difference. And I'm not even going to play the clip. Drug conviction, not a big deal. Canadians with drug convictions not barred from becoming federally licensed marijuana dealers. I guess if you're already a drug dealer, they're just like, well, of course you're a drug dealer. Hey, why wouldn't you be? The police have already said you're a drug dealer. So, like, obviously, they just put that down on your form. And that's from the Department of Health. Regulators would not say how many of the nation's commercially licensed operators actually have criminal records. Who cares? The framework is intended to avoid unnecessary barriers. So, you know, you're putting people in a you know, giving them the opportunity to sell drugs to people that maybe shouldn't buy them, from people that maybe got busted for selling drugs to people before. Who knows better to sell drugs than somebody that's been charged with, you know, selling drugs?
True.
The legislation will do nothing to stop black market trafficking of marijuana to children under 18. Nothing. You do realize that 100% of the marijuana sold to this country, if this legislation passes, will be black market marijuana. I mean, there's a lot of people that say this legalization of marijuana in Canada was a mistake, including a knighted singer, Sir Elton John, and also a very frequent dabbler in a wide variety of drugs throughout his career. But he said it's a big mistake to legalize marijuana. And we see that with some of the numbers for especially young males in Canada. With I've talked to a couple doctors with like the amount of like psychosis and that has afflicted many young males. But hey, who cares, right? We had NDP Forest Minister in here yesterday, Ravi Parmar. We did the interview yesterday. He was out here in West Kelowna there at Gorman Brothers there as they made an announcement to make more in BC as they're trying to diversify what they do with lumber or forestry products here in British Columbia. I mean, there was no, he didn't reveal anything that's going to be done, but he's working with Gorman Brothers. Gorman, I think, has about 6 mills in Canada here. But here's another sad reality, though. Danielle was putting this out. And I mean, I've done so much in the forestry sector, is that many of the forestry companies, a lot of them started here in Canada, including Canfor, is one of the larger mill companies in Canada, also born in BC, said that BC is uninvestable. Said that, 3 years ago, when they killed that project that they were going to do in, I think it was Houston, BC, closed Bear Lake, and then cut shifts. He's a little early. Cut shifts in Prince George. Said British Columbia is uninvestable, but they're investing in the United States. Exports in the U.S. I mean, Canadian firms have quietly acquired mills in the U.S. South, where production increased 27% between 2017 and 2015. And BC-based Tolco's also made significant investments in the U.S. Our friend isn't supposed to be in till 11, is he? Okay, let him know. Harman Bangu also, I think we're going to interview Harman on Friday. Said that the nurses voted overwhelmingly in favor of strike action. That's 55,000 BC nurses against the BC government. And, they're talking about they're burned out. Hospitals dangerously understaffed. ERs keep closing and patients being left waiting in collapsing conditions. I mean, healthcare in British Columbia has just been absolutely abysmal. In Kelowna, we reported on it. Pediatrics, there was a mass resignation of pediatricians that refused to work in the hospital. And then just like spreading that, then in Kamloops, mass resignation of OBGYNs in Kamloops. And then in Vernon, a mass resignation, although smaller, of the psychiatric doctors there in Vernon. And we did report closure after closure after closure of ER departments in British Columbia. I mean, it's lessened a bit though, right, compared to last year. There were so many closures last year of ER departments, you know, especially in communities like Lillooet, where they're told they have to drive over a mountain pass because there's no ER. You know, Merritt, Lillooet, Oliver, 100 Mile House, like tons of these small communities where you would think a country is supposedly could be as rich as Canada if it just tapped its resources. Doesn't provide basic health services like emergency rooms in remote communities. Pretty sad.
Never mind remote communities, and some of the biggest cities as well struggle to do the basics.
And we got some international news, and we got Trump. I mean, you know what? If we could have access to Mark Carney and to the Liberals more often, I wouldn't even mind if he did this to me. Like if I was asking Mark Carney a question, he called me stupid, I'd be okay with it, just as long as we get to ask some questions. Here's Trump talking to the reporter here. And he just goes down the line, though. He's willing to answer. Like Mark Carney, he's walking away as he's talking, right? Like he won't even talk to people. Listen to Trump. He just goes down the line and he takes questions.
Forum that's under budget. It's going up right here. I've doubled the size of it because we obviously need that. And we're right now on budget, under budget, and ahead of schedule. I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. Double the size. You are not a smart person. Right over here, and based on a lot of things that have happened. So what happened is we have a ballroom that's under budget. It's going up right here. I've doubled the size of it because we obviously need that. And we're right now on budget, under budget, and ahead of schedule. I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. Double the size. You are.
It's like he was almost like trying to squash her head, wasn't he? He's like, "You dumb person." Terrible.
I would take that though. I would take that. You know what I mean? If we got Melanie Jolie on here, she could tell us what a bunch of shysters we are and we're stupid, and she could wave her hands in the air and tell us how she has a plan, but she doesn't know what the plan is or what the plan or why is there a plan or who's the plan. And I'd take that any day of the week. Any day of the week.
Yeah, at least he actually speaks to his enemies.
And this is our appeal right here. This is the part of our plan leaking out there. We're going to try and raise money, and we're going to go after this lady right here. I haven't told Ian yet, but we want Bev to be our parliamentary reporter here in Canada. Imagine if Bev was in the gallery there. There's something in this conversation she says that is absolutely almost unbelievable. Listen to this. This is a foreign reporter talking about American politics. Listen.
Bev, once again, you've had the ear of the president. Once again, he's steamed into Stormer. Tell us more.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, well, there are a few journalists in this town who have President Trump's direct mobile phone number. Extraordinary as that is, it is a fact. And so earlier today, with all of this going on, I watched GB News in my apartment. I was watching you, actually, Martin, earlier. And I put a couple of boiled eggs on for my lunch, and I thought, I'll just try the president and see if he picks up. And he did. So it rang a couple of times, and then he picked up and said hello. And I just reminded him who I was. I said, it's Bev Turner from GB News. I'd just like to ask you a question about the situation in the UK, if you don't mind terribly. So he said, I don't have long, but go ahead. So I asked him, why did he think the Prime Minister has lost the support of the country recently? And he said this, Martin, let me tell you what he said word for word. He said, his two biggest problems are energy and immigration. Those he said are his two big problems. He should open up the North Sea immediately and get your energy running the right way, and he's got to stop illegal migration. President Trump has been categorical about this for the last almost 2 years now that Starmer's been in office. He claims that these are the two reasons. Now, he would say that without a decent energy policy, our bills are going to be so much higher. Our energy in the UK, we pay on average 3 to 4 times what they pay here in America. And of course, that's affecting lots of businesses. The President Trump's given us his solution to that. And illegal migration, it's an issue that he's fixed convincingly, categorically here in America, and he looks across the pond and thinks that Keir Starmer should do the same. So that's his opinion today. He's actually just left the White House in the last...
A couple of really interesting things in there. One, immigration and energy. Those are two things that need to get fixed in Canada. Like, those are two things ailing Canada. Like, if you fix those two things in Canada, you fix a lot of Canada. You fix a ton of Canada. That fixes a lot of the healthcare problems, the immigration, and then fixes a lot of the youth unemployment. And the other one is energy, which fixes so much in our economy. Those two things. Thanks, Bev, for sharing that. I mean, it is a policy adopted by UK. Look at their economy. Is a policy adopted by the European Union. Look at what's happened. Their energy and immigration policies. Look at the mess they've created. And it's the same thing that was going on in the United States, the mess that they were going down the road there with open borders. You know, when they said, oh, the border's closed, you know, it's a, you know, like it's just, you know, there's no problem at the border when, you know, like, it's just absolutely ludicrous. Immigration and energy. That's it. That was going to be the headline for the show. But immigration and energy is so important. And the other thing that is actually crazy, this is a foreign reporter that happens to have the President of the United States phone number.
Not the only one. So somebody asked here, Claudio, old friend of the show, asked, didn't she record this? I assume she's talking about the phone call.
I'm sure she did.
And another British journalist from Sky News, I believe, he released a video not so long ago, and he explained the whole process. And he said one of the things that Trump says, apparently, when you phone him up, he says, don't record it, don't broadcast it or anything like that. Just written. I don't want it to go out there. So I would assume that he said the same thing to her. But it is just ridiculous almost, isn't it? It's that Sky. I feel like that the Sky reporter talking about it is even more interesting because he's just like, his mind is blown by this phenomenon. He can't believe it. He said, "Oh, just try to ring him," and the President of the United States picked up the phone. It is, it's surreal. I mean, the only equivalent here is our own little tin pot Trump that we have in Canada, and that's Doug Ford. But Doug Ford doesn't just give his number out to, you know, journalists. He gives it out to everybody. So as a consequence, he never picks up the phone. But, oh, you know, some are saying, but he does. What happens with Doug Ford? What people have said is they text him, and then sometimes he calls you back. But Doug Ford he's chucked his number out everywhere. But you just can't. Doug Ford, you can, yeah, that makes sense. Trump, yeah, okay. But you can't imagine any other important, powerful person in Canada doing that, really, can you? Certainly can't imagine Champagne or Jolie doing that.
If you contrast that with Carney, like, he doesn't even in the government corrupted and crippled media, like in the hallways there, he doesn't even stop to take their questions. Never mind chuck their phone number out there. Like, and they ride on the plane with him when they go overseas. They're on the jet with him. Never a press conference, never a question asked. You know, when they went to China, no questions asked about anything. They're just in the back there stuffing their faces with sausage rolls. And if you're on the Trump Air Force One, you know, some of the journalists actually complain, like Caitlin Collins from CNN, said, you don't sleep. Like, there's no sleeping. Because he can call a press conference, and he does several during a flight. Like, you know, you just don't sleep because you don't miss it, and then you'll get in trouble because you're snoozing, and the rest of the reporters got it, and you didn't. So you got to be up and ready to go.
And it's important because he gets to. It's actually valuable to him too, because he gets to test his ideas. He gets to constantly. He gets the benefit and the privilege of pushback all the time. So he's always able to refine his arguments. And that's probably one of the reasons why he's so persuasive, why so many people are persuaded by him, is because his ideas are constantly scrutinized and constantly challenged. Whereas Mark Carney, he never experiences that. It's all just yes men and people who fawn over him, and his chums at like Davos and so on, who just say, yes, excellent speech at Davos, Mr. Carney. And he doesn't have to submit his ideas and himself to that sort of pressure and that scrutiny. And as a consequence, a lot of his ideas are just riddled with contradictions that a 10-year-old could point out.
And Mark Carney bragged just recently that, Trump asked for his advice on Iran. It's not unique to you, Mr. Carney. He does it to everybody. Like, basically, he asks advice from everybody because he wants to know what's going on. Like, that's one of his strengths. He actually takes in information and then processes it, and like Ian says, tests it and wonder where it goes. But here, they're selling you talking points. They're sugar water salesmen, snake oil salesmen. They're selling an agenda that's not based in truth or reality. And that's the problem. That's why they don't want to take questions. Because if they believed in what they said and it had a strong foundation, they'd take questions on it. But they don't, right? Because it can be easily picked away at. It's like kerplunk. You just pull this straw, pull this one, and it all falls apart. Like carbon capture, industrial carbon tax. It's all just built on a house of cards. And here's one more from Trump on net zero, another message for Canada.
Should he stay or go? Europe is being very, very hurt by immigration all over Europe. Not only stay or go? That's up to him. But I told him from day one, you're getting killed on energy. You're windmilling your country to death. Open up the North Sea. You have one of the greatest sources of energy in the world. Open up the North Sea.
Again, advice for Canada. Build a damn pipeline. Build a damn pipeline.
You're windmilling your country to death.
The birds agree. And Trump has given up on Canada's 51st state. He's got a new target. It's like mini Africa. Hey?
We even lost that competition.
Look at that.
To Venezuela.
I never knew that Venezuela looked like Africa in a way.
I guess. A little bit, yeah. Or a little bit like China even as well.
Well, I guess it depends how you move the puzzle around, I guess, right? Your friend Ed Miliband here, we got one more for Keir here. Ed Miliband has indicated that he's ready to stand for the Labour leadership. You like Ed Miliband, eh?
My good friend.
That's my sarcasm. Let's play this clip here.
It's a busy night here in Downing Street. Reporters not just from UK media but around the world all wondering whether the Prime Minister has managed to fend off a leadership challenge for now or not. And staffers inside Number 10 clearly in for another busy, long night. The lights remain on, as does the lights in the Prime Minister's flat above Number 11. You have to wonder what he might be thinking this evening. He is going to be meeting with the Health Secretary tomorrow. The Health Secretary who is seen as one of the main leadership rivals. Is he, Wes Streeting, going to be telling the Prime Minister he has enough support from Labour MPs to mount a leadership challenge and start the firing pistol on a leadership challenge or not? Well, only Wes Streeting knows the answer to that. But what has been reported is that the Health Secretary will discuss the turbulence currently facing the Labour Party and is due to ask the Prime Minister how he plans on getting the party out of the mess it finds itself in. But if the Health Secretary does end up launching a leadership battle, well, who is he going to be in battle with? Well, Ed Miliband this evening, it's been reported, has been talking to cabinet ministers, fellow cabinet ministers, telling them he's prepared to stand should Wes Streeting launch an imminent leadership battle. And it's also we've also heard this afternoon from sources in the Angela Rayner camp. They've spoken to.
Who's that guy look like?
Don't know who.
Can you put that image up there and you tell me if this is what this guy looks like and see if we can get it up there? You don't see the guy? You don't see it? The magazine you used to read as a child? Mad Magazine? Alfred E. Newman?
A little bit.
Alfred E. Newman?
There he is.
There you go.
I would say, just to point out again, I mean, we've done this to death, but why not? Can you imagine reporters in Canada even trying to get that level of access? Like literally being outside of the place that, like the room where power exists, where it all happens. They're just there. Like the ordinary people can't get there, where he is there in Downing Street, but they let the press in.
Yeah.
Which is
They
something,
stake it
isn't
out.
it? It's
They
like a
stake it
gesture.
out. They
But can you
literally
imagine that in
stake it out.
Canada? Like pointing up, like Mark Carney's in that room. It's like they would never dream of putting that much pressure on them because the press in this country is servile. It's dead. It doesn't even really exist.
They would get their
We don't
funding
really
cut
have a
off.
press.
They would get their funding cut off, and then they wouldn't get any sausage rolls, and and it also to them they self-police themselves. How dare you do that? How dare you do that? Well, look what happened to Juno News in Rebel there when they at the leadership event there when they're just like we felt scared because they actually got in line first. Like just getting in line was scaring them. We got a couple things left before we do our 11 o'clock here. We have Melissa Lantzman highlighting this story. Lindsay Shepherd put this out, and this is going all over on the internet. We don't have much on it today, but this is all over the internet. And supposedly CBC set up kind of like a fake company there to kind of like do a gotcha on this. She wrote a book on Sir John A. Macdonald, and they did this gotcha thing, and a couple of people are commenting on it here. Melissa Lantzman, here's CBC using your tax dollars to smear the very country it was built to serve with running deceptive sting operations, fake documentaries, hidden agendas. And then there's, she sent something in, the CBC confirmed that was a project that they're working on with APTN. And Caroline Elliott also had something to say for her. She's running as a leadership candidate here in the BC Conservative Party, and said a shocking story, totally inappropriate for CBC. Really inappropriate for CBC? I think more the usual course of action for the CBC. I don't know about inappropriate.
They apply these sort of sneaky, wily techniques to try and do this big expose and this big story on Lindsay Shepherd, a person who, sorry if you're watching, Lindsay, but I mean, it's true, doesn't matter even a little bit. She'll matter in her own world, in her own friendship group or whatever. She doesn't matter to the Canadian scene. She's completely insignificant, completely unimportant. But they devote all this energy to her because she's right-wing. And they won't do it to people who are left-wing, even if those people who are left-wing are in power and are very important and have lots of influence over our lives. So they won't do their job. Instead, they just do these like random assassinations of obscure people because they happen to represent politics that they despise, the CBC. It's activism. It's also vindictive. It's needlessly vicious, and it's attacking somebody, a powerless person, and pretending like, yeah, this is journalism. We're holding power to account. No, you're not. You're just bullying a woman with no power or influence, while you let the people who have power and influence get away scot-free.
We got a couple things left as if we're going to do that. Brian Isted is going to join us here in a couple seconds. Goldman President says bank is human assembly line facing automation. Ian and I did predictions 2026. You can go watch it on our YouTube channel. And we said the banking industry is going to get hit hard, and you're going to start to see signs of this here as they do start doing some massive layoffs. NVIDIA, Jensen Huang bets big on British startup, as he said that they're ready to build the next frontier of AI. I guess there's a British startup there that NVIDIA. You said that there was some stuff going on in
There's lots of British stuff, like Google's AI came out of Britain. Like,
yeah, he's one of the former Google guys actually running this company here, former DeepMind guy. And
the DeepMind guy. Yeah, I mean, these are the British. You hear like Evan Solomon talk about Canadians invented AI or whatever. The British have got a better claim to that. I mean, including one of the so-called Canadian godfathers happens to actually be British, Geoffrey Hinton. Well, he's British Canadian. But the British, you know, they've got their fingerprints all over AI, but it all just goes to America because the British system isn't capable of processing the talent, so to speak. So it just goes to America. Same thing happens, obviously, to Canadians.
We got a couple more things just to get through, and we've got 2 minutes here, or a minute left. Starship, going to launch next week. Starship's 12th flight test, debut the next generation Starship super heavy vehicles. That'll be interesting to watch here, and we'll have more on that as we get closer to Tuesday, May 19th, as Starship lifts off. And Google negotiating with SpaceX to launch data centers into orbit. And I think a lot of people recognize that there's going to be a lack of power. Like there's not enough power to power all these AI data centers. And SpaceX says, and Elon Musk says, that the power that they need for AI data centers is in the cosmos. And so Google says, get me on the list to be up there first. And Google is one of the companies that Elon said is going to lead in this as well. And Google also has a kind of a tie to SpaceX. They invested, if I can get this number right, they 100x their investment. I can't remember the top of my head here, like $10 billion, $100 billion. They invested a lot, but it's 10x already. So they have, I think, a 7% share in SpaceX already before it IPOs, and it's probably going to be the richest IPO ever to happen in the world, and likely the most consequential company that's ever been on this planet, SpaceX. And they're talking about that it's just going to be a dominant company. This day in history, a couple of things. In 1846, U.S. Congress declared war on Mexico, starting the Mexican-American War. In 1940, in his first speech as Prime Minister of the House of Commons, Winston Churchill famously declares, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat," as Britain faced Nazi Germany in World War II. There you go. That's a big day for the British people. In 1989, thousands of Chinese students began a hunger strike in Tiananmen Square. Ian talked about that just recently in Beijing. And they rolled the tanks on those students. They rolled the tanks on those. And in the nonsense side of it, it's International Hummus Day. So get your chickpeas and some crackers or whatever you want to do and hummus it up. And National Apple Pie Day. I'd rather do the Apple Pie Day. Bake one, eat one, do both. What's that, the old saying, American Pie? Baseball, American Pie, and Chevrolet? Is that how it goes? I love a good American pie.
I mean, apple pie is invented in England, wasn't it? I mean, just another
bit
of thievery from the Americans.
Here's one of the best desserts you can do when you got a company coming over and you want to make something that's absolutely crazy. And it's very simple to take. Take a goblet, like a big goblet, you know, your English goblet, like a good King Arthur goblet. Chuck the apple pie into the goblet, crumble it up a bit, right? Throw some ice cream in it, top it with whipped cream, put some cinnamon on top there, and stick a cinnamon stick in it. Pretty damn impressive. Pretty damn impressive. And all done in a couple seconds, right? You put that out there, and it looks like the fanciest dessert ever. That's a Jimmy classic. Jimmy classic. Apple pie, smashed apple pie in a goblet, covered with whipped cream, ice cream, a little bit of cinnamon, and yeah, just absolutely, and then a cinnamon stick that you can chew on later. Whatever you want. You can put licorice in there if you want. Whatever you want to do. Dress it up. Put it on your Pinterest. I don't have Pinterest, but pretty nasty. You can do that with cherry pie too. What's your favorite pie? As we wait for Brian now. He was early, like 15 minutes early. Now he's late. Is he here? Okay, we're going to go to a commercial here as we set this up, and then we're going to bring in Brian Isted, former captain in the Canadian military here. Hang on a sec here as we go to a bit of a break here. I'm ready. I'm Jim Czech. With us, Brian. And the other side of the screen is Ian. Can you hear us, Brian? We can't hear you. I think you're muted. Still can't hear you. You got no audio. We can't hear you. Can you hear us? You can hear us, but we can't hear him. Do you want to try leaving and coming back in? Try that. There you go. So our tech budget, we're going to blow it all right here and see if we can get our tech to work. Ian, can you hear me?
I can hear you. We obviously blew it all on Ravi, didn't we, yesterday? It's all gone.
How about now? We still have no audio from Brian. We still have no audio.
Definitely not our end?
I don't think it's our end.
Yeah, it's okay here.
I think your mic, is it connected? Yeah. He's jumped out again. He's going to check it. We'll talk about apple pie while we're waiting. Brian is a former Army captain.
A lot of people talk about pecan pie. I
You
hear
like-
that. Oh, yeah, I like that.
How about now? Still can't hear you. You can hear us, but maybe you want to ditch the AirPods for a second and see if that helps. Or the earpod, like the headphones. If it wasn't for the technical difficulties, well,
Why would anyone watch? If we didn't have technical difficulties, they wouldn't even tune in.
you want to try calling in just on your cell phone? You can do that too with your link. You can do that on your cell phone and see if that works for you. Thought I heard something there for no, still nothing.
Well, if he comes back and it still doesn't work, I think we can go offline, can't we? And do it as a separate thing.
Yeah, we could do that. Well. Well, I mean, everybody's like, hanging on the edge of their seat here and see if it'll work here. That's it. Put your money down on 22 black. Is it coming in?
Yes.
How about now? Still no audio. You sure?
Oh, it's a conspiracy of technology. What?
Obviously, something is weird there. Unplug mic. Someone say unplug mic and plug it in again.
Or you can use his phone.
Did you try? You want to try? Oh,
there we go.
We got something.
Can you guys hear me now?
Ah, there you go. We got you.
There we go.
Sorry about that, fellas.
Hey, no problem. If it wasn't for the technical difficulties, we wouldn't have a great show.
Happy Hummus Day. That's interesting.
Happy
I didn't
Hummus
know that.
And apple pie day. I'm going to go with the apple pie. But we've got a little bit here. Brian Isted, is that how you pronounce your name? Brian Isted?
Isted, yeah.
And a former Army captain in the Canadian Army, a military intelligence analyst, and now a podcast commentator on. And we invited you on the show. And you're going to tell us a little bit of what's going on with the Canadian military, I take it, and what the status or the state of Canadian military is here in Canada.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I love the show. Big fan of you too. So hopefully I won't fanboy too much in this interview, but I love what you guys do. So thanks for bringing me on. But yeah, something came up recently that I think deserves attention. My camera's zooming in on me on its own too here. I don't know what I'm doing with IT. So the military recently did a recruiting push for non-citizens. Are you guys tracking this?
Yeah, we had, yeah.
We had a good laugh about that. Yeah.
Mercy.
Yeah, so yeah, quite literally, yeah. So apparently after doing a little bit of digging into this, many of these folks had only been in the country for a few months at most. So essentially the Canadian military has decided that in this woke push that they're attempting, you know what I mean, to in diversity, equity, inclusion, that kind of thing. Like we need more brown soldiers, we need more purple soldiers, we need more whatever, like pick the color, pick the nationality, that's what they're bringing in. So, and it didn't go too great as per the story. There's infighting between different nations. There's a tremendous lack of respect for some of the female officers because this was an officer platoon, keep in mind. So So BMOQ is your basic military officer qualification. So these would have all been junior leaders coming up through their sort of first, I guess, 10 to 12 weeks, somewhere in there, of training, where these courses are designed to pass you. These are not difficult courses. These are basically making sure that you can make your bed, you can march at the correct tempo, you can load your rifle and fire from a static position at a close target without killing the guy beside you. So like these things are not that challenging. It's mostly just to decide, is this lifestyle for you? Like, are you sure you want to be in the military? Here's 3-4 months of kind of introducing you to what it's going to be like in a slowly ramping up phase. And there was just humongous attrition and attitude problems in the platoon. So it just seems to me that it's a horrific use of recruitment ability that's already stressed to the max to try to bring in on this woke agenda to bring in more women and people and minorities, or whatever you want to call them. And then they just end up not getting along at all with each other and being disrespectful. So I think the irony is not really lost on anyone here. And for the folks I've been out for about 2 years now, but for the folks that are still in, this is, and the people that are honest with me, my colleagues and friends that are still in the military, this is a tragic woke embarrassment. There's really nothing. There's no other way to look at this, in my opinion. And the priority to start hiring non-citizens is a little bit scary and on trend with this DEI nightmare.
Is the reason that they're bringing in mercenaries, for lack of a better word, like non-citizens, and that is because they can't get anybody to sign up? I think like the complement right now is what, 55,000. I think full complement is like 75,000. And then I think we talk about it on the show a lot: underfunded military, under-equipped, underpaid, and undermanned. Like, it's been neglected for a long time. Is that the reason they just can't get like Canadian citizens to join?
So good question, and short answer is no. There has been 6-figure level of applications come in the last few, I can't remember exactly how many years it was, but I think it's less than 5. So we're tens of thousands of Canadian people are trying to get into the military, but they're unable because of bureaucratic and administrative inefficiency. Speaking for myself, when I applied back in 2011-12 timeframe, I think it took me a total of 16 months to get in after submitting my application, doing the aptitude testing, going to all the interviews, doing the follow-up. There was 2 separate interviews that I went to with recruiting staff that had completely lost my file. So I had to take half a day off work, ride my motorcycle up to the north end of Toronto on, this extended lunch break, because I was working 3 jobs at the time to pay bills. So I go up to the other end of Toronto and sit down with the recruiter after taking half a day off for them to tell you, sorry, we don't know, we can't interview you again today because we don't know where your file is. And this happened twice. So it's not that Canadians don't want to join. I think a lot of Canadians do, but there's just so much waste and sort of useless administrative bloat that they can't get in. Like, by the time they go through 6, 12, 18 months of this recruiting process, they've already got another job and they moved somewhere else and they had to pay bills. So I completely understand the attrition, even just among the application process, because it's so inefficient and needs huge reform.
And then the equipment, like our military has been neglected for so long. The way our Navy is, the way our Air Force is. I mean, what was the state? What did you see when you were there?
So another good question. So at the tail end of my career, when I spent almost a year as a staff officer in procurement, I was tasked with what's called force development. So I was buying pistols and ammunition and tasers and armor and all the training that goes along, because you can't have a new piece of equipment without all the training and follow-on things that go along with that to make it a capability. So speaking to pistols specifically, the military police branch, which I was a part of at this time, had so few pistols per officer that they were literally sharing them amongst each other. So you would finish your shift, you would do your unload, make safe, you know what I mean, and literally hand your gun to the next police officer because they don't have enough to assign individual people their own guns. And if the pistols did break, they were cannibalizing existing equipment to fix the other ones. Like, these guns are so old that they don't even have parts for them to replace. So like this almost sounds like a comedy hour joke of, you know what I mean, the military being this underfunded or sort of just poor planning in terms of the force development in that sense. But yeah, I had firsthand exposure to this, and I had nothing but sort of embarrassment and plunging morale from a lot of the MPs that were there, just because like this is not how a functional first word military is supposed to operate.
And one more question for me, but I'll turn you over to Ian. There is we watched the General Janine Kerrigan there cry on TV there, or saying that her organization, the military, was full of racism. And the question we had was then, if that's the case and you're responsible for it, why haven't you tendered your resignation?
So I met Jenny Kerrigan in Iraq in 2018, and I spent a couple days with her as she was the incoming officer for the new NATO mission that was there. And she, like, my interpretation of her is she's a nice lady. She means well. I think that I think she's just so caught up in this woke DEI legacy project that the military seems to be. I don't think that these folks are really in it to decide the best thing for the military now. I think they're more concerned with what they're going to do after they leave, potentially. This is my take on it. I could be completely wrong, folks. Make up your own mind. But she's a nice lady who doesn't look like she belongs commanding a force designed to kill other people. So I don't really, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I never saw racism like that in the military. Like, people aren't joining, you know what I mean, on the way to their clan meeting. This isn't what the Canadian military is like at all. And then, like I said at the beginning, ironically, you bring in these foreign soldiers who are supposed to hit these DEI metrics, and they're all racist towards each other, or many of them anyway. And it's like, it's comically terrible what's happening. And if I put my tinfoil hat on, it seems deliberate, like a deliberate dismantling of morale and just a functional operational force.
Yeah, I think Ian raised that concern too, is like, how does that, like, leadership obviously is everything in military, right? Leadership is the most important thing. And then how are you supposed to, like, have people ask you to, follow you if you're crying, if the general is crying, and you're asking somebody, kill somebody, or, you may get killed that day, and this is your leader. It seems to be the opposite of what a strong military should look like.
The Canadian military is very well respected internationally. Anywhere we go, especially the infantry, and we are disproportionately represented in leadership positions based on how small we are. Just as a comparison of our closest neighbor, the U.S. military, for instance, their smallest element is their Marine Corps, which is 175,000 people. The entire Air Force, Army, and Navy in the military is 50,000 something. So their smallest element is more than 3 times the size of our entire military. So the fact that we're so well represented in leadership positions operationally across dozens of different nations speaks to how good the quality of training of a soldier actually is, especially at the senior leadership level. But people are frantically leaving, like the building is on fire, because they're so embarrassed of what this has become.
Ian?
I was just a comment there. I was thinking when you were talking about all the happy people together in the army, it made me think of the Next Generation, Star Trek, and that's almost like the vision I guess they had. We'll have some Vulcans and some Klingons, and then we'll go and we'll beat the Cardassians in battle. And then in reality, it was just Ivorians and Cameroonians arguing about some West African tribal politics or something like that. It's kind of like when the dream meets reality, the difference between the two. But I just want to ask you a question. This is kind of like ethnic related, I guess. But there's I hear a lot of commentary about the French language and the need to speak French to get promoted. But I'm also very interested in, how does that actually work? And how is it possible to have a bilingual fighting force?
So the context of everything I'm going to answer is from the position of a lifetime junior officer. I left as a captain, so senior officers start at the rank of major, and they would probably have a different sort of top-down view than mine. So just frame my answers that way. But in terms of French language, you cannot reach the rank of full colonel in the Canadian Armed Forces without having what's called a French profile, like a certain amount of aptitude and French speaking ability. So that's why the senior leadership is overly represented with French speaking Quebecers or East Coasters that are Francophone speaking. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, But the folks that come from, you know what I mean, from the prairies, or from the few that come from Ontario, the vast majority of folks that I work with were from out west in the prairies. They make some of the toughest soldiers because they're farm boys that are just used to a good day of hard work. But my career would have been somewhat limited unless I was able to take French language training, which they will do for you. Like you can be loaded on a French language course and get French training if you ask for it, which I did try to do. It didn't work out, but yeah, that's kind of how they, I guess, maintain the language, I guess the language policing that they do within the military. And the French soldiers are some of the hard, like the 22nd Regiment in Quebec are some of the hardest dudes that I ever worked with. Like they are, the Quebecers are tough infantry guys. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but it can be career limiting for certain people. Maybe that's not their first language.
But operationally, it doesn't have an effect because the way I look at it, Canada's from the top down referred to as a bilingual country, but in reality, it isn't. Is it? Canada's not bilingual. I mean, maybe you could say Montreal, parts of Quebec are bilingual, maybe some parts of Ottawa as well, though. But I think that's exaggerated. But the reality is that there's the majority speak English and only English, and then you have some other minority languages. But I'm just interested how that works operationally. So is it the case that you had these prairie boys that you're talking about? Often their officers would be from Quebec. Is that often how it works?
Yes and no. You can kind of end up anywhere once you finish your basic military officer qualification in a combat arms trade, or any trade really. Like you'll get farmed out to wherever the need is in the ORBAT, if they need to put a name and a rank to be a platoon commander or a team leader or administrative position or whatever they're looking for at the time. Operationally in Iraq, I had several French was their first language troops, but we did everything in English. Like I'm the team leader. Like I only speak English, and that's my fault because I'm a single language, you know what I mean, individual in the military. But because the vast majority of us, I think 8 or probably 10 of the 12 were mostly English speaking, but the French guys had no problem. Like they were all bilingual, really good soldiers. You know what I mean? Punched way above their weight for the entire tour. I was really proud of those guys. But to answer your question, in like a French dominant environment, if I was to be posted to a Quebec platoon or something like that, like it would be on me to learn French, and I better learn it quick. But when we were operationally in overseas, like we were speaking English to the French guys, and they had no problem with that.
Right. And I assume you also worked with a lot of people that weren't, they weren't born in Canada. Maybe they become citizens, but people from other parts of the world. How did that work?
I don't think I would say a lot of them, but I definitely worked with a few, and I never had an issue. Like I started specializing in my career pretty early, like getting into what's called close protection. So you become a bodyguard kind of in the military. That was a military police branch protected thing. And then ending my career sort of in the special operations community. I was always keen and putting my hand up and trying to find more work and do harder things. So I was sort of siloed amongst other people that had a lot of the same kind of ambitions and disciplines. So nobody cared where you were from. Nobody cared, you know what I mean, of any of that stuff. Like if you were there and you'd met the criteria to be in the same room, in the same trench or whatever, everybody just wanted you to pull your own weight, and it never mattered. It never mattered to me, and it didn't matter to anyone I knew.
I mean, that is such a contradiction, isn't it, of the boss who said that. But not just that. It's not just Karen Young talking about the systemic racism of them, but it's also the CBC. Whenever I see a story about the military from the CBC, it's usually, there's these Nazis or these people who are like right-wing extremists, and they're operating out of here or there. So do you think that is that all just like way overblown, and that doesn't concord with your experience?
So the right-wing extremism thing is a really interesting insight on your part, because I had a private conversation with a senior member from CANSOFCOM. So CANSOFCOM is the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command. So he had spent close to 2 decades in the special operations community. And towards the end of his career, he sort of confided in me that he was sitting in a meeting with very senior staff, and it had come up that through the political channels or ideological channels, I'm not sure, I think it's one and the same thing now, that the biggest threat to Canada was right-wing ideological extremism. And kind of the people in the room are looking around at each other thinking, like, I'm not sure if we're supposed to take this seriously. Like there's always going to be an incel weird movement that you hear about on TV, or you'll hear about some reservist in northern Quebec who stockpiled a bunch of guns and was trying to do some dumb thing with a couple of his buddies. But this is like such a small fraction to be mathematically irrelevant compared to what is actually going on inside the country. If you speak to frontline police officers, or, you know what I mean, senior military people who have been there for a long time or are not trying to sugarcoat it and get their DEI check in the box, right-wing extremism is not at all the frontline threat to Canada. And the colleague of mine that was sitting in this meeting was mind blown that this came up at such a high level, and they were trying to just, it's, in his opinion, just trying to sort of appease the senior leader. This would have been back in Trudeau's day. So that would have been a really good, you know what I mean, point, a feather in your cap if you're sitting in a meeting that goes up to the MND and Trudeau gets to hear that you're all about combating right-wing extremism. And for that matter, you may as well go after climate change in the military too. You know what I mean? Like it's just become a complete joke.
Right. So just politicization, really. I'll ask you one more question, and then I'll pass you back to Jim. But I'm not sure what your answer is going to be here, because you've said that not enough pistols to go around, and there's woke stuff and various ethnic groups in conflict with one another. But at the same time, excellent soldiers, you know, really strong, really respected. My question is just a general one: is the military, how is it as a fighting force? Could if we got into a serious scrap, as unimaginable as that might be, as a country, would you be confident in the military as things stand now, or do you think it would be a struggle?
Do you mean someone is attacking Canadian sovereignty?
Yeah, like
they blame
an
here?
actual, like a killing war. Yeah, like something serious where we have to actually defend ourselves.
So no. So Canada is so unbelievably reliant on U.S. forces and U.S. capabilities that we would stand no chance at all of defending ourselves. Just for context, the NYPD is bigger than the entire Canadian Armed Forces. So we don't have enough people and equipment and logistical support and, you know what I mean, satellites and all the things that are are requisite to conduct modern warfare at any sort of scale. So there's no way without US and NATO support that we could defend ourselves and our sovereignty. Like we would be almost completely reliant on US intervention and support. Could we, at the small scale, you know what I mean, have sort of force multiplying effects with some of our really unique operational capabilities? Absolutely, for sure, but not without the scalable support from 100% the US. And this whole anti-US rhetoric thing makes me sick.
Yeah, I mean, I just have lots of questions. I do want to dwell on the American, because we talk about a lot, that this elbows up thing, but Canada goes to sleep every night comfortably in its bed under the safety and security of basically the American military in the North, especially, you know, with NATO. We talk about NATO, but I mean, it's American jets, American Navy that protects Canada for the most part, because we've underfunded our military for way too long. What's your view when you look at some of the stuff the American military has done in the last little while, that Venezuelan operation, and then, you know, like what they're doing in Iran, and how would you rank the American military versus, like, you know, any other military out there?
Using what metric do you mean rank them?
Just on their capabilities to win a war, to go to war.
In terms of capability, there's nobody even close, in my opinion. Having been exposed to working alongside American soldiers in Iraq operationally many dozens and dozens of times on hundreds of missions, they are very switched on soldiers for the most part and very good to go. That's so all the way from the kinetic effects of something like how good are they to drop bombs on you, you know what I mean, from the most advanced planes. I think there's 1,600 fighter jets that the U.S. Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marines own. That's more than every other country combined. So it's not even a close competition between militaries in that sense. And then if you want to go to more of the support roles, what are they capable of in like a signals interception, sort of cyber capability, also leading the way there. So it's some of the stuff that I read as an intelligence analyst in the cyber realm in terms of collection capabilities, not Canadian, but specifically the US and the UK, is unbelievable. And this was 6 years ago now. So what they were capable of 6 years ago, I can't even fathom what they can do now. To answer your question, the US is the most capable force on the planet. Like no one's close.
What did you think of that Venezuelan operation where they literally flew in there, didn't lose any assets or men, and literally plucked a leader out of, you know, a stronghold there that had Cuban guards in that, and did that operation there? basically like just like unscathed. What did you think of that operation? I didn't think that could ever. Me personally, I didn't think that was even possible. But
So I don't have complete fidelity on what exactly happened there. I don't think anyone does that wasn't directly involved, but I'm pretty sure it was a Delta based operation. So we're talking like the tip of the spear of the most well-trained, savvy soldier going in there that is capable of almost anything, especially with the levels of support they had. And there's rumor that they had directed energy weapons, something called a discombobulator. I don't even know what to make of that. I can only imagine what it would be like to be standing as a guard of some palace somewhere or mansion where these folks were living, and all of a sudden your brain is scrambled and you have to take a knee on the ground because you can't think straight and you throw up or whatever the consequences of that thing are. But if any of that is true, then it just speaks to the R&D capability that they've been doing in the back end with things like Delta and DevGru and the Green Berets and all, like the real tip of the spear. And that's not to take away from, you know what I mean, the regular army that does a lot of great things that enables all that. But in terms of their capabilities to do an operation like that without losing anyone, as far as I've heard, I don't even think they had to kill anyone to do it. I think it was more or less a harmless kidnapping of the leader of this country without even having to fire a shot. I could be mistaken, but that's my interpretation of what happened.
And then
the Cubans said that that the Cubans were killed, didn't they? That's what I seem to recall, because they had a Cuban bodyguard, didn't they?
Yeah, I think you're right. The Cuban Special Forces, I think, were protecting him in that compound.
And then the Trump administration, they brought in Space Force in his first term, and they were laughed at. But now Space Force seems to be like the real deal, especially with all the satellites out there and SpaceX and all that. What's your thoughts on Space Force?
I guess I haven't really thought about that. I'd love to be involved. It just seems like probably the most fun, coolest thing. That's especially with the stuff that like Elon's doing and how quickly he's advancing. And when one of the last stories you gave before the break there, there's going to be some wild advances in technology and warfare in our lifetime, and it's pretty exciting to see what happens. But I'm not really sure what they're doing operationally. I haven't really looked into them at all, but they're the only ones capable of producing, I think, something to be able to support that.
Yeah, and then they fired, in the Biden administration, they fired, I can't remember his rank, whether he was a colonel or a captain. They fired him because he refused to do the DEI stuff. And then when Trump came back and won the election, they actually put him in charge of Space Force. So that was quite the turnaround, too, as they walked away from DEI there. And, they even changed the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Any thoughts on them getting rid of DEI and what that did to their military, kind of like the morale for the military there?
We need to do the exact same thing. We also need to do a blanket rehiring of all the people that were fired over the COVID mandate stuff. There were hundreds of people that were let go of a military, again, like I said, is already very small and operating essentially at sort of a skeleton crew capacity. They thought it was a good idea to institute, mandates within the military of all this science that all ended up being BS. And dozens of people left on their own. Hundreds of people were released under what's called a 5F, which is the equivalent of a dishonorable discharge in Canada. So you're not even able to apply for a government job after you receive this kind of discharge, just because you had the ability to have critical thinking and question the stuff that we all know now is common sense that was nonsense. So we need someone to come in and effectively swing an administrative hammer and bring back war-fighting capable soldiers who don't have to worry about a Moderna subscription, the way that the U.S. said, okay, sorry, we did that. Like everybody, I don't think a lot of people came back.
They paid back pay to their servicemen that were terminated.
Yeah, and there's been kind of a soft launch rehiring that I read about a couple different times, but I'd be hard pressed to say that any real number of people came back after the bad taste in their mouth of what happened under that leadership. I don't mean to digress here, but I have stories of dozens of people, some of them I know very well, who had very vindictive chains of command. I'm talking about a medical officer. So this is a doctor who was tried to be forced out of the military because this person refused the vaccine and submitted a memo with 35 annexes about why it didn't make any sense scientifically, and it didn't matter. And this person's boss tried to ruin their life, and there was no consequences for any of the senior leadership that did any of that. It was kind of all like, just throw your hands up and say, oh, well, we did the best we could. Sorry about that. And there's been no consequences for anybody. And I think this still lingers, and it's part of the morale problem.
We do lots of stories on, and the Auditor General visited, I think, 14 military housing units and said 7 of them were unfit for habitation, unsafe drinking water, toilets that don't flush, deteriorating walls. And then, like they also did stories on some of the enlisted are living in their cars or couch surfing. Is that neglect of the military? Because sometimes you'd say this has to be intentional, or why is the military treated so poorly?
So when I was staying in the shacks, in the military, you call it the shacks or like the barracks, kind of where you get temporary housing, and you've got different kinds of temporary housing. So you've got the shacks where you live when you're on course and training. So you live in kind of a giant dorm room. Sometimes you can have 3, 4, 5 other guys in your room, depending on the size of the room. Sometimes it's just another dude in a small room or a female with you or whatever. I have had mixed dorm rooms, and again, nobody cared. Nobody was being weird about it. Like, you're just there to try to get some sleep and do work. So those buildings are horrific. Like, there's mold, asbestos. Routinely, I would pick mouse feces out of my bed every night when I came back. You know what I mean? Because the mice have been crawling under your sheets during the day, and you have to sort of pick it out, and hopefully you don't get hantavirus. You know what I mean? When you're going to sleep, and then you contrast that with, again, what's called so private military quarters, or PMQs, where they house individual military members and their families on sort of military supplied, quote unquote, subsidized housing that is still quite expensive for what it is. So you have corporals or privates paying, you know what I mean, upwards of $1,000, whatever it is, a month to live in this mold filled shack of a building that will likely be condemned within the year. And that's kind of your only option because you can't afford anything else. And there's very little housing to go around in some of these really small towns. And to touch on what you said about it being deliberate, it's either deliberate or the level of planning is so unbelievably horrific to make sure that you've rolled out enough housing to give these soldiers somewhere to sleep and somewhere to make some food at the end of the day, that like you shouldn't be in logistics anymore if you can't plan anything of this scale. And I it's hard to believe that anybody could be that bad at their job or that vindictive of a leader, but I'm not even sure what to believe after the last 5 or 6 years anymore.
It seems like it's horrifyingly embarrassing, though. They stand at the podium, when you have the minister in charge standing at the podium and talking about how they're investing in the military and doing all these things, and then you have the Auditor General saying, "Well, look at all this mess." And it's pretty obvious in the equipment. I think we did a story just recently. Whenever there's that requires air transport, lots of times you're either using commercial transport or you're hitching a ride with the Americans. We don't even have the air transport to move our men and women to, where they're doing exercises.
Yeah, but we have $30 billion to launder in Ukraine. You know what I mean? Like there's just the money is there. We're just not spending it on the people that actually need it. We have $200 million, as you guys pointed out several times, for a gravel parking lot in the East Coast. Like why is this not going to training and equipping and housing? You know what I mean? The folks that are doing some of the hardest work you can possibly do. Like this stuff that I did in the military, some of it was absolutely soul searching at times. You know what I mean? Like you have to question your decision-making processes when you're living in a hole in the ground for weeks at a time. So it's like, I think the least we could do is provide these folks with some, you know what I mean, some quality food when they return to the base. You know what I mean? Give them something that's not, you know what I mean, McCain hot dogs or whatever. Like it's just from top to bottom, this thing needs to be almost burnt down and rebuilt. But the money just goes everywhere except for the folks that I think actually need it.
When we look to the United States, like they did a complete about face. It seemed like their military was in the same place. They were heading that way. They were doing a lot of DEI, electric tanks, all kinds of stuff. We had, blue-haired people leading them and all this kind of stuff. And, firing the people that wouldn't take the vaccine. And then they basically ripped that stuff out by the roots, and it felt some blowback on it. But it seems like their recruitment numbers are way up, and, the military seems to have a lot of pride. I'm not saying it doesn't have any problems, but it's a complete about face. And what's it going to take to do that in Canada? Like, what would it, like, you seem like you're still a young guy and still young enough to serve. What would it take for you to go back to the Canadian military and say, yeah, that's the place I want to go and serve?
It would take pretty much a complete dismantling of the senior leadership, which took the most severe blow, in my opinion, under General Wayne Eyre. So the prior CDS to Jenny Carignan was a gentleman named Wayne Eyre, who just was, I think, searching for any opportunity to cozy up to Trudeau and secure a position in the UN or something, I don't know, as a legacy project. But we need to bring back war fighting, toxic masculinity, or you know what I mean, as like a blue-haired person would call it. But that's what you need. Like, this is a war fighting operational force. This is not there to make friends. This is not there to stack sandbags in a flood, although they can be used for that. You're trained to kill people. You shoot at targets in your basic training that are shaped like people. There's a reason for that. In the first couple world wars, they noticed that a lot of the shooting was going over top of the heads of the other soldiers, and almost trying to just keep their heads down because they're afraid to shoot at people. And they corrected this by changing the targets from concentric circles to the silhouette of a human. So you got used to shooting people, you know what I mean? Because that's, at the end of the day, depending on your trade, like, you are either there to do that or you're there to support someone who is actively doing that. So I hope that somewhere along the way, it's definitely not going to happen under Carney and the woke, you know what I mean, Trudeau 3.0 that we have with him. But if they can bring someone in that actually has the respect of the guy, everyone from the guy on the ground to the most senior general, I think that would be a good start. And then you have to start forecasting so that the people that take over 1, 2, 3, 4 after them are going to continue that momentum. Because you can put in one person and they can do a great job, but if there's no continuity after they leave, everything falls apart. And it's just, I don't know how likely that is. I would hazard a guess that it's very unlikely that they will do anything like that under the current leadership. But that's, in my opinion, what it'll take to bring back something that guys are proud to wear the flag and proud to wear the uniform.
Ian?
Talking about killing and dying, when I was a young chap, I flirted a number of times with the idea of joining the military, and I can remember a lot of people would say, you know, do you really want to kill people, or do you really want to die? That's often like the main objection. I wasn't particularly bothered about that, as I'm sure you can sympathise with that. A lot of people aren't. They understand that that's necessary. But I have to say now, when I see the Ukraine war, that's a very different kind of killing and dying, isn't it? I have to imagine that my young self would just immediately say no to that. Like, the idea of dying by being hunted by like a mini toy helicopter that just comes at you and blows you up. I'm just interested in, you know, as somebody who's actually served, and you've had all these moral discussions with yourself and with others about killing and dying. What does that change it completely for you? The idea that, you know, the killing would be done remotely, that's one thing, but also that you would be killed and hunted by these little machines.
Great question. There's a book called On Killing by a former Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who talks about exactly this and the psychological effects of proximity to death, I guess we could sum it up as. So the guy in the trench, you know what I mean, bayoneting the soldier will probably have more trauma than the guy who shoots him from 100 meters, who will probably have more trauma than the sniper who kills from 1,000 meters, will probably have more trauma than the helicopter who flies above and just does that make sense? Like, the closer you get to the actual murder, the more effect it's going to have on you as a person, as a you know what I mean, a quote unquote typical human being, which would struggle with that. You do think about it. Like, I've never killed anyone in the military. We got rocketed and mortared a few times in Iraq, where it was a little hairy whether they were going to land on us or not. But for the most part, the most danger that we were exposed to was moving around the city in armored vehicles, but completely susceptible to IEDs. And we're just mixed in the general civilian population. So we're just driving civilian pattern vehicles, and we have lots of armor. We're ready for a gunfight. But at the end of the day, if someone rolls up next to us with in a vehicle-borne IED, they'll just evaporate us in a second. Like, there's no defense for if they have enough firepower in that car. So you kind of have to compartmentalize that. And the Ukraine example you gave is very interesting, because Ukraine has sort of, using trench warfare, World War I, World War II tactics, which is where actually I think the vast majority of the killing was actually accomplished at the ground level, using, you know what I mean, literal just attrition style warfare right on the ground. And then it evolved into now drone swarms taking out air assets, taking out ground assets. So it's kind of the full gamut of, you've been exposed to everything from what you would have seen 100 years ago to something that we've never really seen before. And there's really no defending that as a conventional soldier. Like there's some things that you might be able to do if you're part of JTF2 or, you know what I mean, CSOR or some of these other Canadian organizations that might have assets and support to give you early warnings or something. But if you're a frontline soldier and you see a drone coming, it's probably already too late. So that's an interesting question. I appreciate the question, and it's something I have thought about, but we've never really seen anything like this. And I think that we're going to trend towards more mechanized, more automation, more AI in this realm. And it's probably, in my opinion, going to be a few very smart, savvy people that are able to operate advanced robots, basically machines, in sort of large volumes that have that kind of agility to adapt. Hopefully that makes sense and it wasn't too long-winded.
Yeah. No, and what you were saying as well about proximity. I mean, another example would be in the Second World War, the fire bombings of Japanese and German cities, and obviously the atomic bombs as well. But they were so far away from it, I guess it can't, well, we know from testimony, it didn't haunt them the same way that, as you said, the guy that had to go and like bayonet people or whatever. It really is that proximity thing. But I would just say as well on those, because they release the videos, don't they? The Ukrainian, I think the Russians do it as well, but usually I see the Ukrainian videos. Some of those videos, God, it's talk about soul destroying. Just people like hiding in a barn and stuff, and it's kind of, it like checks each stall. The drone checks each stall of the barn and then spots what looks like somebody hiding, goes in, it's just, I know that like, so you're still dying, even if that's a man that comes and shoots you with an AK-47. They both represent death, but for some reason, it's worse. I find the idea that somebody controlling a little toy, like 100 miles away or something, is just going to kamikaze into you. It's I feel like they had, and it's interesting you mentioned the First World War, because they had these conversations and debates, didn't they, during the First World War, where they were saying they've taken all of the honor and all of the kind of nobility out of warfare, and it's just like artillery and rifles, and it's just gruesome. It's like this industrial killing. And they had that had huge philosophical consequences. So I do wonder if we're in for the same thing with drones.
Well, the U.S. has been using drones since all the Middle Eastern wars. You know what I mean? Going back to the early 2000s, where they have trained pilots in Nevada in a sea container with an Xbox controller. You know what I mean? Evaporating a family based on an intelligence package that they were handed. And I know some guys that had been building these intelligence packages and handing them off to the folks who would then turn it into a kinetic event. And even the guys that are just building the packages based on the pattern of life of the people that they're following had some, you know what I mean, reservations and some psychological distress of knowing that hopefully the guy that on the other end of that joystick is going to press send when the guy's hopefully far enough away from his family that there's, that everybody doesn't get killed. But they don't always wait, as you can see, like during the Obama years, and how many drone attacks and how many people were killed and how many more terrorists we created out of that. It's a whole other conversation. But yeah, the U.S. has been doing this pretty effectively for a while in terms of remote killing.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's to do with it being just like one drone, one person, and that's the whole battle right now, it seems, in Ukraine. For some reason, I think that's a bit different. But I'm conscious of your time here. I don't want to hold you too long. But I want to ask you one last question from me. I don't know if Jim's got any, but I want to ask you about domestic intelligence and COVID and stuff. You've written about or spoken about that, haven't you? That you were involved in that. Can you just explain what that was? What your role was?
My role in the collection, or the stuff that I talked about COVID. Those are a bit different.
Well, I mean, the intelligence side, rather than.
So I did about a year and a half, close to 2-year stint in a place called CF Intcom. So that's Canadian Forces Intelligence Command. That's the umbrella agency that houses a lot of other intelligence teams, and from transnational to domestic and all that stuff. So my specialization was cyber intelligence analyst. So I was looking specifically for threats to Canada and the allies at a strategic level, and how the cyber realm kind of either facilitated that or enabled transnational organized crime, terrorism, and I guess crypto, money laundering, that kind of thing. So the stuff I was exposed to, like I said earlier, like the collection capabilities that were available to the US and the UK almost exclusively. Canada doesn't have anything like this, although we do get to benefit from the intelligence collection reporting. Like there's things that can detect keystrokes on a keyboard, you know what I mean, from you don't even have to be very close, like to figure out of who's operating some kind of device. And like I had top secret clearance here, so I don't want to say things that are overstepping boundaries that'll get me arrested. But the landscape of intelligence collection and the abilities of the most savvy intelligence technology wise, I say, are unbelievable, and no device is secure. This line that we're on now is not, like, nothing in your phone, in any device you have, if it has an internet connection, is vulnerable to penetration from almost anybody. If it's a state actor, certainly your Signal application that's quote unquote encrypted is 100% not safe. Like there's so many vulnerabilities now. I don't know if you're familiar with the intelligence collection that was done through the CCTV surveillance in Iran by Israeli intelligence, how they tapped into all of the cameras in Iran to follow the pattern of life of the Iranian senior officials, to develop these packages on them to figure out when they have breakfast and where do they have tea and where do they go to the gym or whatever it is. And they did this for 2 years, just using Iran's own CCTV being hijacked through Israeli intelligence technological assets to build all this pattern of life. And like, I'm not here to comment on whether or not, you know what I mean, I support Israel or Iran or any of that, but like as an intelligence collection operation, that is unbelievable and hard to fathom that there's any escape if there's a state-backed actor that wants to commit this kind of, or commit to this kind of intelligence gathering. It just, you lose a little bit of sleep at night over thinking about, you know what I mean, how vulnerable everybody really is.
Yeah. Well, you're saying you don't want to give away secrets or whatever, but there is quite, I mean, you can Google it, can't you? There's lots and lots of, I'm sure it's not as comprehensive as your knowledge, but there's lots and lots of leaks and whatnot. I was thinking about, is it called Pegasus, that thing? And that's invented by Israel, I believe, where they can just get you, I think they need your phone number maybe, but then they've just got your phone basically at that point.
They used to need your phone number to use Pegasus, and it was delivered in a no-click. I can't remember the exact name of that kind of attack, but it's a zero-day no-click attack. So if they have your phone number, they could remotely access your phone and everything in it and track you GPS. They don't need your phone number anymore. They just need, all they need to do is your name, and like as soon as they know who you are and they decide that something's going to happen to you, that's all they need. Like they don't need your number, they don't need any identifying information. They'll just find you through whatever means they're doing. I don't understand how it works. I'm not a computer scientist. I was just an analyst of the information. But yeah, that became famous with the Jamal Khashoggi incident and what happened in Saudi Arabia with that Pegasus leak. But the stuff they have now is way more advanced than that. They can be in your device and out before you know anything happened.
And this, you've sort of talked about this. That's the COVID side of things, isn't it? Like some of this has been turned on us, hasn't it? Could you sort of talk about the extent to which this these tactics, these technologies have been used on us here in Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2022, sort of at the height of the convoy protest in Ottawa, there was a CANSOF signals intercept plane that was seen circling above the protest. So this is a propeller plane, relatively small, like not maybe about the size of a small bus or something like that. You know what I mean? It's not a huge plane, but it's big enough to fly over top of an area and use signals intercepting technology. And by signals, I mean a phone, a computer, any smart device that's able of sending or receiving data can be intercepted remotely. So this plane flew over top of Canadians quietly protesting next to their, and I don't say this as hyperbole, like I lived in Ottawa during this. I went to the convoy to see what was going on. There were bouncy castles and hot dog stands and free coffee for families, and it was not at all January 6th in Canada like the media portrayed it. Like that's has nothing to do with reality. But we had Canadian Forces assets flying over top of the convoy in what would be called a scraping pattern. So scraping is just basically flipping the switch on that turns on these collection capabilities so that now every single person on the ground there within range of this plane, so everybody that's there that has their phone, everyone carries their phone all the time, is now pinging this plane as if it's a cell phone tower kind of thing. And this plane is now knows who you are, because most people's phone numbers are attached to their phone, unless you have a burner that you bought at 7-Eleven or something. Like your phone number has your name. So now they have your passwords, your pictures, your messages, your call logs, like absolutely everything. And this was very likely to have been done by the Canadian military on Canadian people. And that is highly unethical and highly illegal. So the way that I went about trying to prove that this happened, because the plane was spotted by a journalist, and then ATIP was submitted saying, hey, why was this tail number of this known special operations signal plane seen circling? And I read through the ATIP that had been done for this. I actually submitted one myself, and there was traffic back and forth from the internally of the Canadian Forces saying, "Hey, is this our from public affairs officers to operational people and supporters on the ground?" Forgive me if this is a long answer, but it's a bit complicated. So
it's fascinating.
The journalist that had requested the information from the public affairs had said, "Can you tell us why this plane was seen circling over top of civilians?" And the military's immediate response was, "That's not our plane. We don't know what you're talking about." Because I read the emails, I saw the traffic myself. And then the journalist pushed back saying, no, this tail number was seen. Like, we have the flight logs. We know exactly where this plane was and what it was doing. Do you guys want to try a different answer? I'm paraphrasing, but it was more or less that. And then the military machine in the background spooled up saying, "Hey, was this ours? Like, what was it doing there?" And then they basically came to an answer of, "Oh yeah, it was ours, but it was just doing a training flight to support pilots getting hours." You know what I mean? Because pilots have to get hours, they have to fly planes. That's how credentials work in the military. But why was it flying in a scraping pattern? I submitted more ATIPs after to figure out exactly what was going on and what communications I think were happening between various pieces of law enforcement and 3 and 4 letter agencies in Canada. And these ATIPs were all blocked. They were all blocked. They kept saying there's no information, there's nothing here. I said, dig deeper. Like, I know that there's correspondence. For someone in the military to push back and say, we don't know what you're talking about, that's not our plane. There are so many people involved to launch even something as simple as sending a plane from Petawawa or Trenton to Ottawa to fly in a bunch of circles and return. Dozens of people would know about that, dozens, just to make sure that there's fuel and flight times, and there's probably a signals operator in that plane, maybe even AXO, and now all these different trades of people that goes into making that. This isn't 1 or 2 people whispering to each other in a dark room saying, "Oh, let's go do a spy mission," and probably nobody knows about it. A lot of people knew about this. It absolutely happened. And from the email traffic that's been dug up through ATIPs, they're just trying to hide it. And this is a scary level of government overreach that I've been trying to talk about for a couple years now, that the military is absolutely trying to hide. The federal government seems like they're absolutely trying to hide this. And we need some daylight on this to know what actually happened.
Wow. Well, I could keep going forever, but I'll pass you over to Jim, and I'll just say that's quite scary and very, very interesting.
I don't even know how to follow that, but I did have a couple of questions I wanted to ask.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be so bleak here, but there's a lot of info.
We'd love to have you on again, that's for sure. I mean, it's been great, and then the comments are just streaming, and so I think that the people watching are very much is agreement with that. So one of the questions is we talked about on this show, we talk a lot about how the military is paid, and we say it's underfunded and underpaid. And we look at that, we you know, I think the base salary is, I think, at $40,000 to $44,000. That's like when you're starting out. And the base salary for the average salary for a bureaucrat in Ottawa is $140,000. And then they literally get to work from home 3 days of the week, or they think they have to go in 3 days of the week. And we're actually asking our soldiers to go and either get killed or kill a stranger. It seems like it's upside down. The people that are actually like the bureaucats that have this cushy job and they don't even like to work, and they can't, it's almost impossible to get fired. And we're paying our soldiers like meager amounts, and we're putting them in some of the most hostile conditions and many times like absolutely atrocious living conditions.
So the answer is a bit complicated. So I agree with everything you just said, especially about the overpaid bureaucrats. And living in Ottawa for 6 years as a posting there, I was exposed to people that are, to say that they're not motivated is putting it mildly, you know what I mean? But Canada is actually the second highest paid military in the world, only behind the Australians. So the difference being there, I think that Australians are a unionized military, which I don't understand how that works. Well, you could go on strike, I guess, for better wages over there, and maybe you're But I did interview for a job many years ago with the Australian military and got a bit more fidelity on how they house and treat and fund their soldiers, and it's much, much better than we do. To justify offering a big salary to an incoming private who, may or may not have a high school education is something probably outside of the scope that I'm like educated enough to comment on, because I didn't have a ton of exposure to it. But to say that they're underfunded is absolutely true. If you're above the rank of, I think, sergeant or warrant now, the pay is actually not bad. Not when you compare it to, I guess, these $140,000 bureaucrats. I think that it's skewing to make them look like they're being paid less because other people are being unnecessarily paid so much more. Can you survive off $40,000 a year? I guess the short answer is like absolutely not. But there are also incentives where if you join, like, you're living in the barracks, so you don't have to pay for shelter. You often don't have to pay for food, which are new things that they've changed relatively recently. Like, they were charging us that just a few years ago, but they made changes now that you can keep more of your own money. You're not required to pay for what's called R&Q, or rations and quarters. So it's a complicated answer, or complicated question rather, that requires a bit more of a deep dive in terms of justifying the pay at different rank levels and education and experience. But I don't know who would be able to live off 40 grand a year, but if you don't have any other bills to pay, you could probably stretch it for a while. I'm much more concerned about getting the proper training. But we absolutely do need to put more investment into the housing so people aren't living in buildings filled with mold. We had if I can speak personally real quick about an experience we had in Gagetown in the infantry school many years ago. I guess we were all dismissed early from one of the mandatory make work projects that we were given in between training. And a bunch of us went back to the shacks, I guess, prior to lunchtime. And we ran into guys in hazmat suits that were walking through the halls of the building. And we're like, what is going on here? And it turned out that they had been quietly disposing of and planning the removal of asbestos in the building that we were in, but didn't want any of us to know that it was going on. So they did it when they knew we wouldn't be there. So we ended up catching them when we came back on a break that we weren't supposed to have. And it was just one of those things where you just kind of say, oh my God, like, what decisions have I made to get me here? But you just kind of accept it, because you don't really have an option. You're not allowed to live off base a lot of the time, depending your rank or what you're doing. So you hit the nail on the head. Like, there's so many institutionally just weird and disgusting problems that we're not addressing properly, but we keep funneling money for diversity, gender training in Uganda or whatever. Like, I just made that up, but I think you guys get it. And it's so weird and sad, and it's morale crushing for the men and women that are there that have to eat boiled pork chops. You know what I mean? Like, tastes like leather for day after day. It's just, I don't know. I never joined the military expecting to live in the Ritz. Like, I grew up as a lower middle class kid. Like, I didn't really care, but it can be cruel and unusual, some of the things they do.
And then my last question, and we'll let you go, is we did a story recently that just kind of like blew our minds, and I just want to get your take on it. The government spent, I think it was like $1.3 million. This was a camera project, so they were $1,200 on cameras, and they wanted them to go out to hand these cameras out to homeless LGBTQ veterans so they could take pictures of themselves, and then they could put it up in a gallery. And this was supposed to prevent homelessness for LGBTQ veterans. And we were just like, what? And then, like $1.3 million, but the cameras only cost like $1,200. But it was just like, it seemed like a boondoggle. And of course, there was no uptake. They couldn't find enough homeless LGBTQ veterans to take pictures of themselves.
Where did the money go? Do we have any insight into where the other
administration,
where the $1.29999 million went of the $1,200 camera? I don't understand.
Administration to
LGBTQ homeless veteran. Like, this might be one person. This might be one person that they've tracked down.
One of the problems, they said they couldn't find enough because it's not like the most obvious identity group.
This is just another example of the graft and the self-flagellation of, you know what I mean, why we need to keep telling how bad the military is at one thing or another. It's full of toxic this or that, when that 1.3 million could have been spent on building PMQs I wonder how many PMQs they could have built that didn't have mold in them. Like, it makes no sense.
Or everybody gets their own pistol for, I mean, I think the last time I remember that story is the Russians. You did 2 Russians, 1 gun in the Second World War. And when your buddy dies, you get your own gun, right? So, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? It's absolutely.
My budget for force development for pistols, I think was around 2 million. So that would have outfitted half the military police branch with shiny new pistols and ammo. So it's pretty wild and it's not surprising at all.
And the dart you threw out there with the gender equality rice and that, you know what, you're pretty much bang on. Like, you can almost make up the most ludicrous things. I think there was millions of dollars given to a ski school in Lebanon. Of course, it was a gender affirming ski school. And then there was gender equality rice in Thailand. I mean, it's just rampant fraud, waste, abuse, corruption. And if anything we need in Canada, it's a Doge for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that there's folks like you and Ian doing this and bringing light to this and just speaking from a pragmatic, logical perspective. Like, political skew aside, I often feel politically homeless. You know what I mean? Looking around at what's going on, I don't necessarily love one team or the other, but it's just I'm really glad that you guys are doing what you're doing. I watch the show. I like the show. Ian sent something. I just want to quickly call you out with this because I really liked it selfishly. You mentioned how Mike Myers had been talking about the whole elbows up campaign. Like, why are we leaning on Canadian celebrities who probably live in Beverly Hills, who don't spend more than a week here a year, to tell us what Canada should or shouldn't be doing and who we should or shouldn't be voting for? It's so unbelievably delusional and insulting that we have this anti-America campaign. I just spent most of the winter down south in Florida and South Carolina, and every American that I met was thrilled that I was there. They had no idea that there's this anti-American or bad orange man. Like, think whatever you want about Trump there or up here. Every time I told an American that I was Canadian, they were pumped that I was there, and they loved when we came down, and they asked me about different things about Canada and what I thought about being in Florida. And Americans are almost unilaterally, of all the ones that I met, were amazing. And we live in this weird silo of anti-American psyop that's portrayed to us constantly that they have no idea about. And I just thought that was a really unique thing and a good insight by Ian. And keep doing what you're doing, because I love the show.
I just said the great secret that they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know this, folks, is that the vast majority of Americans are absolutely lovely. They are a very nice, kind, friendly people, and somehow we're sort of keeping that secret here, aren't we? We're pretending that that's not true, and they're so nice and friendly and lovely that, you know, some of Canada's best sons and daughters, like Joni Mitchell, Mike Myers, and Neil Young, have chosen to go and live with them rather than us here. It is one of those strange things. I mean, the Americans, they get a lot of heat, but I mean, who could say different? Who's actually been to America? Who could deny that they are, generally speaking, very, very nice people, like unusually nice people?
I agree, especially in the South. I loved it.
Well, God bless America. God bless Canada. And God bless our military as well. The guys, the men and women that are actually serving Canada. I mean, we appreciate your service as well. And we'd love to have you on again.
I'd love to. Can I shamelessly plug my independent journalism that I've started
Yeah, you
doing?
can. Yeah.
So I work for a new media company called True Patriot Love Media. You can find them on YouTube and Spotify, and I interview interesting folks like Sam Cooper and Gary Clement, and just following trends in crime and defense and everything that interests, I think, me and other folks in Canada. So check us out on YouTube and give us a like, give us a share if you like what you're doing, and also stay tuned here too, because I love this show that you guys do.
We just shared the Spotify link. And maybe we can find the YouTube link and share that as well.
Is the website just truepatriotlove.com? I'm on the website now.
tplmedia.ca is the landing page, and then it's this I can't remember the exact URL on the YouTube splash page, but it's something similar to that with the YouTube built in there somewhere.
We just shared the YouTube page there too, so the YouTube page is up there.
I'll put the URL in for you. There we go.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that.
You know, and thank you, Brian. And again, we'd love to have you on more frequently. We have a few guys that we have on frequently, and we'd love to have you on frequently as well. I think we're trying to spread truth, and it seems like you're on the same journey as well. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to come back. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we'll let you go, and then we'll sign off to our show after that. But thank you for joining us, Brian. You can just you can X yourself out there, and we'll chat with you again. That was great. It was absolutely great.
Yeah, I would say that's got to be one of our best ever interviews, and very, very interesting.
You know what the cool thing is that every time we get a guest on, people are saying that's the best one yet, and that's the best one yet, and just like I think it was it Van Gogh or Rembrandt, and then when they asked him what his best painting was, and he said, "My next one." I can't remember who said it, but and our best interview will be our next one. But he was really, really good, and I think we should have him on more, especially when we talk about military stuff.
Yeah, well, it's a combination of experience and intelligence, isn't it? That's what you want.
Truth shall set us free, and that's the truth of the matter, right? And what do we got going on here? I think that's it for today. You know, light day in the really big show. But tomorrow we have what do we got going on tomorrow? We were supposed to have Melissa Landsman, but that's been put off till next week. She's coming on the 21st now. Melissa Landsman had a conflict there. Renee, we have Beyond the Ballot tomorrow, and on Friday, I believe we have Ian Black's going to join us at 11 o'clock, one of the leaders for the Conservative leadership. And then Harman Bangu at noon. And then I think we have Peter Millibar. Anyway, we got lots of stuff going on the Really Big Show. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. PST. Look at the background. Sopped in here in the central Okanagan. We need the rain. They could probably use that in Whitecourt as well for the fires there. So. Go east, rain. They need you. They need you out east. Anyway.
My wildflower seeds need rain, so
there you go. Until tomorrow, have a great day. Stay safe and share this as far and wide as you can. Share interviews like this, and we'll get more great interviews and help us spread this truth throughout the Canadian landscape. Thank you. Cheers.